morning, everyone. Warm welcome to Sarajevo for the ones who are joining us today in International Youth of Children and Youth, but also to our dear guests and participants who are joining us via Zoom. It is my great pleasure to welcome you today for the second informal donor coordination meeting on youth agenda within the broad coalition on youth that we have jointly created in RCC together with youth, policymakers and representatives of donor community. So back in April, we have organized the first donor coordination meeting where we discussed how actually to go further with this initiative and how to make sure that voices of young people are being heard. Therefore, it is my great pleasure that today, just a few months after, we are witnessing some of the main conclusions that actually have been transmitted into concrete actions, not but by the RCC, but actually by all of us. And therefore, it is a great pleasure that today we are going to have a youth panel. Since last time, somehow we had a chance to learn from donor community what are their initiatives and what are the actions being implemented within the region. Today, we are going to discuss the online platform that, as per conclusions of the first donor coordination meeting, has been created, as well as to see what are the needs and what are the actually calls of youth from the region when it comes to youth actions. Nevertheless, we are very happy to see that joint communiqué prepared by the RCC, again, as per conclusion of the first donor coordination meeting, has been endorsed and supported by youth, policymakers and donor community. But all of these are actually the topics that we are going to discuss today. Sorry. So basically, we are starting with deploying this new approach of the donor coordination when it comes to youth. And without further ado, I would like to start with the official opening of the meeting, since we are already a bit late. And therefore, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Maja Handžiska-Trendafilova, RCC's Head of Program Department. Maja, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ogi. Hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
Okay. So, Ogi, friends joining us there, ladies and gentlemen, really a very good morning and welcome also from my side on behalf of the Regional Cooperation Council. I'm sure all of us gathered here today, either virtually or physically there, are glad that we will have the chance to reflect on the broad coalition on youth, as well as explore what are the further steps that we can jointly take together. I'm actually, Ogi, joining this call from Skopje, where we have just launched the first Butterfly Innovation event that is showcasing innovative solutions from the region. And many of the presenters here today come from our talented youth, and I'm sure many more will join and inspire us in the next editions as well. So really demonstrating in vivo what is the drive, the innovation, and the potential that our youth has. So it gives me great pleasure to open this meeting, as its ultimate goal is to contribute to improving the lives of youth in our region, since there neither is or will ever be a more valuable, of course, resource than what we have in our youth. By saying this, allow me to also thank the European Commission for clearly recognizing the importance of youth and for supporting the establishment of the youth labs, which was agreed as part of the Sofia summit in 2018. Let me also use this opportunity to thank the various donor organizations with whom we really intensely consulted as part of the mapping in order to get the comprehensive overview of the donor support that is being extended to youth needs and youth policies. But not only for this, also for the numerous meetings that we have organized with them to present and discuss the concept on the broad coalition on youth. So with this youth project and the youth lab concept that we in RCC implement, we are really trying to make sure that policymakers work with youth and, of course, for the youth, jointly identifying what are the main issues at hand, what can be some of the prospective solutions. And of course, it does not come as a surprise that our first lab, which we launched back in December, was dedicated to youth unemployment, one of the most burning challenges faced by our youth, problem that knows no borders, especially in our region, and that has strong impact on our youth. And further to this, actually, just a couple of days ago, we had the pleasure to launch the second youth lab, which is dedicated to the issue of youth mental health as another burning topic that has been put forward by the youth representatives. However, and now I come to the core of today's meeting, addressing what we have identified jointly as an issue and the possible solutions can't be properly implemented with standalone efforts. And this is very clear to all of us here. It is crucially important that all relevant regional, international organizations, partners active in the region and supporting youth and policy makers on this path work together. And that is why the coordination and exchange donor platforms like the ones that we are having today are instrumental. So with this in mind, we're particularly happy that youth is getting more and more attention, both at the level of economy, so in the national realm, but also in donor support programs. So advocating for regional cooperation and exchange for years, we in RCC believe that there is always more that we can learn from one another, and that information sharing and early coordination and even pursuing joint actions, joint endeavors is of utmost importance. So we really rely on all of you and all of us to make sure that we boost this process. So it's at least all around here, both there, physically in Sarajevo, but also virtually are aware. The main aim of the broad coalition for youth that we launched was to bring together all the relevant stakeholders in the field of youth, such as, of course, representatives of the government, the youth councils, youth umbrella organizations, the donor community, and all the relevant partners. And for this reason, we're grateful to all of you who supported this idea during the consultations and, of course, later on as part of the first informal donor coordination meeting. So such meetings as the ones that we're having today should really enable a bit more systematic, more regular exchanges. And the plan is that they will be additionally supported by the online platform that the team in Sarajevo will have the chance to showcase it today in its beta and pilot version. So this platform should provide us with a real-time overview of what is the ongoing support for youth, so as to foster this exchange of ideas and joining of forces in the areas of mutual interest for the benefit of the youth. However, and here a kind plea to all of us, for the platform actually to be fully up to speed, user-friendly, informative, your really continuous and proactive inputs and support will be needed. But I'm confident that we are going to make it, and really in such a way we will demonstrate that we stand up to the commitment that we jointly undertook so as to strengthen the coordination mechanism in the long run, and also to ensure that there is a sustainability of the process. So Ogi, I'm finishing here just to reiterate that we in RCC will continue supporting this process. However, fully relying on close cooperation with all of you, as really only together we can make it work. So, dear colleagues, all joining us today, I really hope that we'll be successful in this objective, and that today will be a productive day, opening whatever new avenues we can jointly open to support youth in the years to come. So it now gives me great pleasure to give the word to Mr. Gianluca Vanini from the EU delegation to Bosnia and Herzegovina, thanking him also at the same time for the support that EU is providing to the overall youth agenda in our region. So, Mr. Vanini, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Do you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you
okay,
perfectly
okay.
well.
Thank you to the Regional Cooperation Council for having invited us to the second informal donor coordination meeting on youth agenda, organized under the EU Finance Western Balkan Youth Laboratory Project. The European Union, as you are aware, is supporting the socio-economic development. Sorry, just one second. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, with a view to increasing standard of living and well-being of its citizens. As you also mentioned, in all our assistance and the need to put youth at the center of the assistance, in our assistance, youth has always been included as one of the targets group, and this practice will and shall continue in the future. In addition, I also would like to take this opportunity to inform you that Bosnia and Herzegovina committed to the Youth Guarantee Scheme, which was reflected in the Western Balkan Declaration of the second ministerial meeting on employment and social affairs held in July 2021 in Slovenia at Brdo pri Kranju. The Youth Guarantee, a few words about it, is an inclusive and ambitious policy framework that the EU member states have used extensively and extremely well also to secure a smooth transition from school to work, support labor market integration, and make sure that no young person is left behind. It is an activation scheme to ensure that all young people aged between 15 and 21, 25 and 29 receive a good quality offer of employment, continued education, apprenticeship or traineeship with a certain period after becoming unemployed or leaving the formal education. So a scheme which helps also the transition between school and the working environment. By implementing the youth guarantee schemes, partner countries will continue to contribute to the principle number 4 of the European Pillar of Social Rights. It's about the active support to employment. They will further promote reforms in social sector, align their labor market and welfare system with the European Union. The support to the youth guarantee has been planned under the European Investment Plan for the Western Balkans. It's under the flagship 10, and you'll find also on the web the plan, which should provide for necessary preparatory work in establishment in the Western Balkan countries, including Bosnia and Herzegovina. In this preparatory stage, it refers to development of countries' youth guarantee implementation plans. So let me conclude that from our perspective, an inclusive society in which all relevant actors, including youth, participate fully in policy making is an objective to be achieved in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So let me wish you well in your work, and especially, as it was also underlined before my intervention, in making your voice heard in the policy discussion and in decision making in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Vanini, for your introductory remarks. And once again, we are thanking the European Commission for support to youth agenda overall in the Western Balkans 6. And we are very happy to learn that youth is remaining quite high on the EU's agenda when it comes to youth participation in decision making, but also when it comes to the mechanisms to be actually translated from the EU best practices to the region as well. So now, as we are all gathered in Sarajevo, but also virtually, it is my great pleasure to announce Mr. Nedim Alibegovic, Secretary General of the Youth Council of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to address us all. And Nedim is someone with whom we in the Youth Lab are actually cooperating very closely, having in mind that our project is working with public administrations and national youth councils or youth umbrella organizations in the region. So therefore, Nedim, thank you very much for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ognjen, for inviting us and for actually believing in the youth councils as structures and youth umbrella organizations in general in the region, but also in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you all for coming here and being part of this event. Even though at first glance this kind of event seems logical, I mean, it is completely logical to have this kind of a meetup really often. I must be like really honest and say that maybe up until recently, maybe a year ago, we haven't had this much of an opportunity to really open the floor among youth organizations and youth sector as such, and the donor community. And that's why I believe that this kind of event and this kind of opportunity is really important to become not only an ad hoc event, but really to become kind of a platform and a mechanism through which we'll constantly try to come back to what is important to youth and what should be kind of an aim for donor community as well. There are many reasons why, me personally, maybe because, of course, I'm probably subjective because I work and believe in the story of youth organizing and the benefits it can actually give in the long run. And there are many reasons why this type of coalition and this type of, especially what is important in coalitions is this open space and honesty in communicating and cooperating as such. One of the reasons I think why is it important to have these kind of discussions is the effect. And when I say the effect is actually what can be done and what can be the result of our cooperation. One thing that is for sure important is when we talk about international obligations, and actually, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, every international obligations and things that we have said, and the governments have said also on an international level that we will do in Bosnia and Herzegovina, for example, for us as youth councils, but as youth organizations also, it's much more effective and we can be much more stronger as a force in actually communicating the need to implement those obligations if we have enough and relevant support of the donor community. The other thing that for me as a youth council representative and as a young person that is actually constantly communicating with youth organizations from the smallest local communities, we tend to see something which I'm sure that my colleagues on the panel later on will talk much more about, is this gap between how youth organizations actually don't feel that they are understood by the donor community sometimes. At certain moments, they believe that something that they need to work, the need that they see in the community is not part of the programs of the international donors, domestic donors, and the community as such. And that gives us a gap, which we for sure have to find a way to overcome, because we have to actually, by our common cooperation, try to find a way to stop that moment that we all fear happening in the civil society as such. And that's doing the projects just because they are supposed to be done. And that is something that we don't want to see, especially we don't want to see that in a context of giving systematic and the long-term change. And I think that the youth councils and the youth umbrella organizations in the region, but also in Bosnia and Herzegovina, are really persistent in seeing this change, in this structural and systematic change. And sometimes what is missing is this belief and vision that strong youth organizing, strong youth structures can actually also really give into this vision. And on the maybe the latest point, like for now, for me, which is also really important, is that there are many things which are kind of assumptions, or how can I say it? Like the things that we have, like there are many things we have to do before we can talk about strong and independent youth structures, about many young people gathered together from all of the communities all over the region. And that's the same case in Bosnia and Herzegovina. When we talk about strong youth councils, youth structures that can actually be the actors of change, the creators of revolutions, if we also want to see it as that, we have to invest much more. We have to really see that as our common vision. And then we have to come back again and actually think, do we create programs and do we actually do our work in order to make that happen? And I'm not really sure, but I think that in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in a context of youth policies and what the governments also have been doing, is not investing in youth organizing, is not investing in building the coalition among youth also. Because I think that is also not in a political agenda always. because you maybe do not want to have sometimes a strong youth structures. And that's, I think, the way, especially in the past 2 or 3 years, the youth councils have really shown that they can work really good things, that they can work together, and that they can be an example of positive practice when they give, and when they are given the support that they actually needed. So I think that in this spirit, I think we can also have a really good discussion in the panel later on and during the whole event, and think about how to actually bring this coalition of youth and the donor community and this broad coalition of everybody else that is important more closer together to really answer the needs of youth. And then we can expect that the youth will be the drivers of change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadim, a lot. Thank you very much. And somehow you provided a really good food for thought when it comes to also broad coalition on youth and in general, this informal donor coordination mechanism that we have established, because that is the main essence, but rather to see what are actually the needs of young people and what also others who are involved in the youth policy sector can support those endeavors in the future. Also, when it comes to Youth Council's role and cooperation, we have witnessed this summer, but also later on, the regional gatherings first initiated by the National Youth Council of Serbia and later on also continued by the all Western Balkan 6, sending the message of cooperation and synergy, and that actually young people from the region are really willing to cooperate. In that regard, and also in light of previously said, it is my great pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Uroš Pribičević, Assistant Minister for International Cooperation and EU in the Ministry of Youth and Sports of Republic of Serbia. Mr. Pribičević, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, and I want to apologize to everyone because I have some issues with my camera, and I need to address you in this way. So, dear participants of today's meetings, it's a great pleasure to address you on behalf of the Ministry of Youth and Sports of the Republic of Serbia. I'm especially glad to have continued with the activities that were planned within this project, and that they are going smoothly despite the challenge caused the pandemic. The Ministry of Youth and Sports highly appreciate all the efforts and commitment of the Regional Cooperation Council to implement this project, which is additional to the main goal of the project, strengthening formal and informal mechanism of your youth participants in developing to component of donor coordination. In the previous period, my colleagues have been very active in the lab dedicated to improving the employability of young people, and based on that, with the financial and expert support of this project, was prepared a research on youth entrepreneurship, need employability, and career management skills. We had the opportunity to hear the first finding of that research yesterday at the International Youth Conference organized by the Ministry of Youth and Sports in Belgrade, with the financial support of the Western Balkan Youth Lab project. In the coming period, at the regional level, colleagues will deal more with the topic of youth health. We all know how relevant this topic is, taking into the consideration today's circumstances. However, we are particularly pleased that the project has established this informal mechanism of donor coordination focused on the youth. Young people are very often identified as a soon cross-cutting issues when it comes to donor assistance. That is why they consider it extremely important that we will not have this donor base in one place. I'm convinced that we will be a great benefit to many actors, bodies responsible for youth organization, and other stakeholders. As we approach the end of the year, I would like to take this opportunity to wish everyone happy upcoming holidays, and I hope that we will see each other more often in person next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pribicevic, a lot for joining us today and for addressing the participants. And we are very happy to learn about success of the International Youth Conference held yesterday in Belgrade. Despite the fact that we were not able to join you in person, we have heard about fruitful discussions and research that has been presented in regards to youth employability, youth entrepreneurship, and similar topics that were supported by the Western Balkans Youth Lab project. And somehow now, following the key messages from our dear panelists, we are starting discussions on concrete informal donor coordination mechanism established this year. Again, as per youth needs, and somehow on the very beginning and before we move forward in regards to online platform and also hearing concrete activities and concrete messages by our dear youth panelists. We believe that it is very good somehow to reflect on what was happening before the first informal donor coordination mechanism, but also what happened in meantime. And therefore it is my great pleasure that today with us we are having Miss Bleriana Bino, our dear friend, I would say, and guilty one for this informal donor coordination mechanism, since Youth Lab has implemented the mapping of youth policies earlier this year, and Bleriana was the team leader of the regional mapping exercise, and somehow as a main, let's say, result was also the mechanism itself. So from the scratch until the second donor coordination meeting, Bleriana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ogi. Thank you very much for the invitation. It is always a pleasure to be back in Sarajevo, but also to join RRCC events. And as you said, I'm really happy that I see that this initiative that was jointly developed when we did the mapping exercise not only came to life with the first informal donor coordination meeting, but is growing even further, exactly as we envisioned as a broad coalition on youth. I would focus a little bit on the context and on the trajectory, let's say, from the first to the second informal donor coordination meeting, and also some suggestion about the priority areas that came up in the mapping exercise, but also in the first donor coordination meeting, and recommendation on how to move forward. And of course, then we are all looking forward to learn more about the online platform and also develop it even further in the future. The work that the RRCC and the Western Balkan Youth Lab has done has confirmed actually that there is increased interest in youth and youth-related issues across the Western Balkans from a diversity of donors, and we saw this also in the first informal donor coordination meeting. Again, considering that governments claim to have youth as a priority, but in practice they rely on a significant extent on donors in terms of the financial funding that they provide to youth. It is on a positive note that we observe that the EU, but other donors as well, are mainstreaming now youth across their programming and funding scheme in the Western Balkans, and this will provide definitely more momentum and more support for youth actions. Also considering the Western Balkan Youth Forum that was organized in the summer in the framework of the Berlin Summit 2021, a regional youth agenda was presented as a co-creation between youth and other stakeholders, and the messages and the priorities align with the priorities regarding youth support in the future, regarding youth participation, empowerment, and inclusion basically in public life. At European level, we know that the European Union has made the upcoming year as the European Year of Youth, and again Tirana, as we all know, will be the European Youth Capital for 2020. So against all this backdrop, the second donor informal coordination meeting builds upon the results of what we have achieved in the first one, and of course is trying to strengthen this communication, this dialogue, this coalition further for the future, with the aim to bring together all the relevant stakeholders in co-creation of initiative, of actions together with youth. with youth. And as Ogni mentioned, this is why today we will hear more from the initiatives and the ideas of a representative of youth organizations, youth councils, youth groups and networks across the region. The overall aim, of course, is to help in prioritizing youth issues in the Western Balkans, to support alignment of regional governments' youth policies and priorities, and donors' programs and interventions in youth sector. And as Nedim mentioned before, basically the idea is to bridge the gap in terms of priority and in terms of addressing the actual needs of youth across the Western Balkans, considering them in various contexts, and particularly focusing also on those who are usually more marginalized in remote areas, in rural areas, so as no one is left behind. In the first donor coordination meeting in April, despite the challenges at that time associated with the first wave of COVID-19 pandemic, more than 80 representatives took part and discussed in details their initiatives, their programs, and their priorities in supporting young people across the region. And I will mention briefly the three main areas we worked on the first donor coordination meeting. Basically, the first was on ongoing priority areas for youth, which are areas that already receive a lot of support and attention from policymakers, from donors, and from other stakeholders, such as youth employability, and of course, rightly so, education and mobility, vocational education and training, civic and political engagement, and of course, intercultural and inter-ethnic relations and reconciliation. And then we worked on two other pillars, let's say emerging priority areas for youth, and areas that receive very limited attention, but that are becoming extremely important. In the second group, we focused mainly on youth migration and brain circulation as a key topic for youth, but the entire societies in the Western Balkans. Participation and the role of youth in terms of the green and digital dual revolution, if you like, but also youth and security issues, how to keep youth away from extremism, radicalization, and organized crime. And then youth activism in a multi-ethnic context, but also in a post-COVID-19 context, let's say, in terms of promoting online advocacy and activism and relating youth activism with the contemporary challenges that our societies are facing today, such as, for instance, polarization, high level of polarization. And the third one, in terms of this priority areas that receive limited funding, but that are becoming extremely important, the focus was placed during the first informal coordination meeting on rural youth and literacy programs for youth, such as media, data literacy, and digital literacy, to be able for them to make the smooth transition from education to labor market, but also in terms of adapting to the rapid changes of the labor market, also in light of the pandemic and its impact in economy. Also youth and science and cooperation of youth and diaspora and cooperation of youth in the Western Balkans, but also beyond the Western Balkans, across Europe through various programs, such as, for instance, also the Erasmus Plus of the European Union. And in terms of some of the suggestions that came up, but also recommendations that were part of the mapping exercise, but were reiterated in the first informal donor coordination meeting regarding the funding mechanism. So it is highly recommended to continue the direct support to youth, particularly in emerging priority areas, as I said, but also focusing not only on the usual suspects, but broadening the actors, both formal and not formal, that work with youth across the region. As it was mentioned in the opening remarks by the representative of the EU delegation, Youth Guarantee Scheme is crucially important. When we were doing the mapping exercise and the first informal donor coordination meeting, the Youth Guarantee Scheme was emerging and being implemented in North Macedonia. Now, I think across all the Western Balkan countries, governments, donors, the EU, but also other donors and youth are working on this scheme, which is extremely important for the economic empowerment of youth. Also, we suggest, and also it was reiterated in the first meeting, and I think that we need to take this up in the second and continue these efforts to support not only formal youth organizations, but also informal groups, networks, individuals as well who act as community leaders at local level and small grassroots organizations. And this could be done in various ways, also through peer-to-peer support between well-established organizations and new one. Another recommendation and suggestion, but also a confirmation in the first meeting that we think we should take up again regarding the area of focus in terms of capacity building for youth organizations, such as organizational development, project management, fundraising, networking and advocacy, lobbying, but also digitalization, communication and outreach. So how to be able to achieve greater impact. And of course, it is necessary to have flexible mechanisms. And I think the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and 2021 confirmed this need for flexible support mechanism for youth that are agile and that are able to adapt to the concrete needs of youth organization, but also youth groups. And I think this is all from me at this moment. And of course, we look forward to the contribution of the RRCC, the EU, but all other donors in terms of keeping this mechanism alive and strengthening it further through the online platform, but also through various meetings at regional level, but also at national level for youth empowerment. Thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Blariana. Thank you for, first of all, for your hard work on the informal donor coordination mechanism, but also for joining us today in Sarajevo. Somehow, as we heard, it is of great importance to really make all activities as per youth needs and as per all the actions that actually young people are willing to implement. So therefore, we on the first informal donor coordination meeting have discussed a resource hub that might be useful not only for young people, but for the donor community and policymakers as well, because at the regional level, we are lacking the information source where we can actually learn what the others are working on and actually closely follow the work of our colleagues. And therefore, and in that regard, I would like to give the floor to Petra Baložić, political advisor in RCC and also a great supporter of the Youth Lab when it comes to all activities that we are implementing. So Petra, the floor is yours, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Ogi. It's always a pleasure. Lovely to see all of you here offline, but also those of you who are joining us online. We will be talking a bit more now about the online platform of donor support, which is really part and parcel of the efforts and of the entire concept of establishing the informal donor coordination mechanism for the youth agenda. When we are thinking about this basically database, a hub, a resource hub of information, we were thinking about what the best practices have been in order not to duplicate the efforts and in order to really learn from the best practices. And we have turned to RCC's experience with CDAD, which is the Southeast Europe Donor Assistance Database, which was established to collate information on donor assistance related to the implementation of the SE 2020 strategy. So we look toward adjusting and upgrading this existing platform to provide best added value for the youth agenda as well. So the online platform aims to provide detailed information on donor-supported projects directed towards the youth agenda in the Western Balkans. The Youth Actions Donor Assistance Platform is really aimed at creating a sustainable resource hub. And I want to emphasize here sustainable and to emphasize resource. It is one thing to establish a platform, but it's even more important to keep it alive website, to keep it a live thing, so that we really have the access to the most up-to-date data to allow for networking of all the relevant actors and to ensure the accessibility of this information for all of those for whom this is important. So now that we have prepared this platform and hosting it on the RCC or Western Balkans Youth Lab website, we are looking towards strengthening its content and usage and ensuring the regular updating of the resources. So to tell us more about that is Biljana Barošević here with us, and I would like to give her the word so that she can present the functioning of the platform itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Good morning to everyone. First, before I begin the actual presentation of the database, I would like to emphasize that the database is still in a beta version. In technical terms, this usually means that the existing implemented functionalities of the database are not yet tested and debugged. But in this specific case, it also means that all the foreseen functionalities are not yet implemented, because the implementation of some of the functionalities that we foreseen when we developed the database, the implementation of these functionalities depends on the actual input. That is the information we are able to gather from the donors for the actual projects that will be presented on this database. I will explain more about the implemented functionalities as well as those foreseen functionalities that are not yet implemented during my presentation. And now I will share my screen, so you can see my browser. Okay, there it is. The platform is currently available through a password protected link, since it's in beta version. Once it goes live, it will be featured on the RCC website together with the other projects platform database that the RCC developed. As you can see from the very first screen of this database, that is it designed and layout is very modern, vivid, youthful. Actually, it covers the general visual identity and branding of the Western Balkan Youth Lab project. The first screen of the database is divided in 3 sections. The middle section, of course, is information about the actual database, the title of the platform, together with logos of the implementers and donors. And we have this link, read more, that leads the visitors, the first visitors actually, to more detailed information about the platform, about the projects, etc. At the top of the screen, since it's the main functionality, is of course the search of the platform. And at the bottom half of the database, we have some functionalities that are related to creation of reports. I assume that these functionalities will be used more by expert users who are more in the field of the youth project implementation. And they will be able to create 2 types of reports, analytical reports and statistical reports. I will start from the top. For the first-time visitors, of course, we intended some kind of short tutorial for searching and using the database that will be accessible through this link. Need help. The search of the platform is actually very straightforward. At this first screen, it allows basic search. Basic search implies searching by keyword, by donors, by location, and by status of the project. Donors, of course, we have a searchable list of all the donors whose projects are can be found on the database. As for the location, we have a list of WB6 countries, and for the status, visitors are able to find a project that are completed, that are underway, meaning that are being currently implemented, and together with the projects that are planned to be implemented sometimes in the future. Besides this basic search, visitors are provided with advanced search tool. I will show it. I would show it later. And if a visitor doesn't enter any criteria, which is of course possible, and just clicks on either this search button or advanced search, they will be taken to the complete list of all the projects that are available through the platform. Currently, we have like 93 some kind of test projects that we so far gathered from the donors. For each of the project in the list is we have a basic information, that is the title of the project, the status of the project, start and end years, and their budget in euros, together with short, like intro text, a couple of sentences that are describing that project. At the left side, we have filters that allow users to narrow the search results. We are currently looking at all the projects, but these projects can be further filtered, of course, by keyword, by donors, locations, their status, start year, end year, and their budget. In addition to these filters that are currently implemented, we foreseen to have some additional filters. These additional filters could be the beneficiaries of the project, like the very organization or target groups, whatever, that are benefiting from the implementation of this project. And another information is implementers. Currently, we have only donors, but in most cases, donors and implementing organization are not the same, and it would be very useful to allow the wider public to know about the actual implementing organization of these projects. And also, we have foreseen that each of the project is accompanied by the information about the area of intervention, the area of intervention, what is the working title of this field, which this project belongs to. Currently, these functionalities are not shown because, as I said, this is the beta version, and we are not sure if we will be able to gather all these necessary information that are relevant, and it doesn't make sense, of course, that some projects have these informations while most of the others don't. I will just demonstrate how the search works. Let's say I enter the keyword leave, because I'm targeting a certain project, of course, that I've prepared for the presentation. And the project we currently have the most information about, and here I have the list of all the projects is, of course, narrowed to only one project. That is the project Leave No One Behind, that's being implemented in Albania currently from 2017 till, as I have this information here, till 2025. When I click on the title of the project, I will get its detailed information. At the top, we have let's say some metadata about this project, what type of the project is this. We have two types of projects. The first type is the projects who are youth focused, And the other types are projects who are considered to be general intervention, but some of their target groups is youth population, so they should be found in this database. Another information is related to the time frame, the start and end year of presentation, the scheduled status of the project, whether it's completed, underway, or planned, the location, that is the economies of the region that the project is being implemented in, and the list of donors that are taking part in financing this project. Beside the name of the donors, it is foreseen that the title of each donor is actually a hyperlink to a sub-page or pop-up window, which contains contact information and other relevant information about the donor. This functionality is, of course, very useful, since it contributes to the visibility of the actual donors. Below this main metadata, at the bottom, we have like description of the project, containing the objectives of this project, the key activities that are being taken in order for the objectives to be implemented, target groups, and results or impact of the projects. Additionally, there is a possibility to provide additional documents and links for the actual projects, like maybe PDFs of project documentation, for example, a website of the project, which is very useful and attractive information for the visitors. I'm speaking from the position of somebody who is not in the field of the actual youth projects. I'm just a regular visitor who would like to know some information, and I like to visit a website of the projects that are here. And additional important section is project budget. As you can see, this section is currently this section is currently not filled in with information, because in this short term we didn't have a chance to provide to gather this information. But it is foreseen that this section contains the information about the currency, the currency in which the budget is represented, of course, and the summary of all the funds that are received from each of the donors, as well as the funds received from the gathered by the beneficiary as well. Of course, as I said in the beginning, this information needs to be provided from the donors. Once this information about the budget are entered in the database, it will allow visitors to use this functionality I showed at the home screen, which is related to statistical and analytical reports. These statistical reports are related to budget, and in order for them to be functional, the information about the budget, of course, has to be in the database. Additionally, we have this link for exporting the project in the PDF. This means that the visitor can save this information found in the database at their website. This database has 3 types of users. The first type of users are general public. They are, for them, the application is not very interactive in sense that it's just it has one way of communication. The visitors are searching for the information, and the database is providing the information to them. This is just one way of communication. Of course, this database has another type of users. These are the administrators of the database, technical staff from our company, which we are in charge of the maintenance of the platform, of course, as well as the staff, program staff from the RCC, who are, sorry, it says something connecting. I know, okay. Okay, so here I am again. As I said, the second category of users are administrators of the database, and additionally we have a third category of the users, which I think that are the most important category in order for this database to make sense, because without these types of users, we don't have information to present. These users are actual donors. The platform allows the donors to log into the database and independently manage their information, both information about their actual organization and information about the projects they are implementing and they want to feature on this database. You see at the top of the screen, we have this button, donor login. All of the interested donors will receive their credentials for accessing the database. I will enter some test credentials here. Once I log into the applications, to the application, I'm immediately taken to the list. Okay, it's something, it's late or it's freeze because sorry. Okay. So I logged into the platform and I was immediately forwarded to the list of my project that I'm entered as a donor. So I will just briefly show you these functionalities related to donors. Once I log in, this donor login button changes to user menu. This user menu has 3 links. One is for management of my profile, management of my projects, and for the logout from the application. Currently, I'm at the list of my projects. I can see in this list the title of the project, the start and date, the budget in euros, the scheduled status, and I'm able to delete this project and to modify it. If I click on the title of the project, I will be taken to the project modification form, which is, I think, very straightforward. It has several sections through which the donor can change the information about the project. We have this general information here. These are the metadata that can be found on the top of the project details website. We have the very content that is this. Let's say descriptive sections of the project, like title, objectives, key activities, target groups. Additionally, we have a budget and donors section related to beneficiary and implementers and documents. I will just show you these functionalities, not going very deeply into the explanation. All the interested donors will be provided with both some kind of a training for using of the application, as well as a technical support from our company who is in charge of the implementation of the database. I just wanted to show you that it's pretty easily how easily it is to manage your projects. Additionally, we from the Enigma and the nice people from the RCC agreed that we will prepare some kind of Excel form that will be distributed to the donors, which will contain the necessary fields, and they will be able to fill in this Excel form and send us the information, so we can enter them enter the information for them in the database. Additional functionality is management of my profile. Here you can enter the organization info and contact person. That is the person who will be charged in front of the donor for this management of the database and the communication related to the database. Once I log out, of course, I will be taken to the homepage of the platform. So this is what I had to present so far. Of course, you are welcome to ask any questions either now or after this meeting and panel. As I understand, you have a discussion after this that we will discuss the platform. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Biljana, for this really excellent presentation, and also for all the hard work on this platform, which will be invaluable in the context of donor coordination in the youth agenda. However, I do want to, so as you have heard, the RCC will be hosting on our server the platform itself. However, the running of this platform is really your ownership. So the amount of data that we will be able to enter will depend on the participation, on the active participation, let's emphasize that, of representatives of donors, of youth and public administrations. So it would be great, as I said at the beginning, to keep this a live web page, to also have the banners and the link to the platform on all of your websites, to make sure that everybody knows about the platform, has access to it, and gives their contribution to the platform. And as you have heard, you will have the technical support at any moment at the RCC from the Enigma, from the team members, which you all know and love already. So it will be smooth sailing as long as we have everybody's active participation. This is really for you and by you. And now I would like to open the floor for this discussion. So if you have any comments, again, offline or online, please speak up and let's discuss. Any icebreakers? Thank you. Yasmin, please. And if I can just ask everyone to just briefly introduce themselves so that we all know who we're talking to.
Thank you. Good morning, good day to everyone. Thank you, Ogi. Thank you to all the RCC colleagues for inviting us. And I'm really happy that I can be here today face to face with all of you. I really hope that next year we will have also more the possibility to put all of this COVID things behind us and to enjoy more face-to-face meetings. My name is Jasmin Valjevac. I come from GIZ. I'm the project manager of the Western Balkans School Exchange Scheme, also financed by the EU and the German government, which we are implementing together with RICO. And the project basically, which is focusing on supporting RICO in strengthening its capacities and establishing a regional school exchange scheme, which we are now branding and promoting as super schools. So I think this is something you will hear more about in the future. I mean, thank you very much for the presentation of the platform. I think this is really something which is very much needed, not only for the youth topics and youth topics, youth projects in the region, but in general. My question is more technical, and I don't know if you have already discussed this, for example, donor-wise. As you know, I mean, GIZ is also quite a big organization. We have several projects in basically different, in all of the Western Balkans 6. We also have bilateral projects, regional projects. So how is the idea in terms of contact wise, because I mean, we have also worked on some platform, and I'm fully aware, as you say, that then the maintaining and keeping the platform alive is the biggest challenge. So is the idea to have one contact person per donor, or per donor per country, so to say, or what is here the basic idea then to, yeah, for the platform to be updated?
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you a lot. If I may answer on this question. So basically the idea of the platform is to have the updated information on all projects related to youth in the region, and mostly focusing on regional ones. So also while Biljana was explaining the content part, you could see the beneficiary part, but also the target groups, where we can list all of those that projects are affecting, but also beneficiaries in terms of the concrete economies in the Western Balkans 6. So basically the platform provides the space for all information that you deem important to be placed can be actually placed within the platform. And in that regard, I believe that all partners, let's say possible ones, could be presented, but also if some of the projects are actually taking the let's say place in different economies, or are requiring more participants and more target groups, all of those can be explained within the platform. Also having in mind the important role of the GIZ, also through some general, let's say, program-wise activities, which are not concrete projects, we can also provide information on those. But again, as Petra reiterated, it's mostly up to each of the specific organizations what actually you would like to present on the online platform. Still having in mind, let's say, some of the newest regional projects of the GIZ that are targeting directly youth. I believe that those ones should be definitely on the online platform, but on the other side also some of the other general activities that you internally think could actually benefit a lot. In terms of who will maybe, let's say, share the information with us so that we can place the information in the platform, or as Biljana explained, if you would like to have your own, again, on this matter we fully rely on internal coordination between the offices in the Western Balkan 6, but nevertheless we are already in communication with most of the organizations, meaning field operation offices, so we can, if needed, also we in RCC can facilitate the communication, so as just to make it easier for you, while we can ensure the proper data to be placed in online platform. Nedim, you would like to add something, or it's
more of a comment, like regarding the platform. I mean, because the main users of the platform are donor community representatives, something which can maybe also be a heading, which can be useful for youth organizations, I think, as such, is to have maybe a small space for that, because the donor community is there on the platform, using it to see other projects of other donors. It can also be a good tool for them to see what organizations are working in certain fields. So it doesn't have to be a lot of information there, like from the youth organizations, but it can just be youth organizations profiles that are actually present at one page. Because I think that when donors are planning their projects and actually planning their resources and where they will put it, it's important to also think about, do they have anybody to give them to? I mean, who will be the implementator, which is, I think, the most important part of doing the project. It's not about just giving the money, but the money being implemented and spent by the best organizations in the field. And I think that can be maybe a good way to do that also, but it can also be a good way that for something which is really important and we maybe miss sometimes to see, is that the donor community as such can also partner up with organizations which are not always the biggest ones in the field, but are the ones that are rising and that actually have the know-how but don't have the capacities. And that maybe momentum on the platform can be the info to donors to actually, by investing in those organizations and their capacities and partnering up with them, can actually bring to the stronger youth sector and the stronger youth organizations actually in the field in all of the countries of the Western Balkans. I mean, that's just maybe a comment and something which can be good, and it's not so hard maybe to implement.
Okay. we can hear ourselves now. Okay, thank you for that. And that is exactly the feedback that we are looking for when we say that this is the platform for you and by you. So anytime you realize that there is a gap, that there is something missing, please do let us know. And I think that what you have mentioned now is very much valid and very much implementable. Please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this is something that we can work on.
As I said, we already foreseen the section that is related to implementers. We will, in addition to the database of the projects, this will actually be the database of the implementers, because all the implementers, if we gather this information from the donors, will be listed in those filters of the search. So a visitor will be able to select an implementer, and get the list of their projects, they implemented together with the areas of intervention the implementer, the youth organization, is dealing with. So this functionality is already foreseen to be implemented, but its implementation depends on the actual, as I mentioned several times, on the actual input from all the users of the platform.
Thank you for the clarification. Do we have anyone else who would like to take the floor?
She answered what I wanted to ask. So.
Okay, so the question was already answered in advance. Okay, good. Very efficient. We can also read minds, talking about artificial intelligence. I see, so Ms. Regima Fati from OSCE commented online that implementing organizations or entities should appear along with donor section. So this has been the comment. Yeah, exactly.
Short input. It's not about the ones that are, I think that is important to say. It's not the ones that are currently implementing the things. It's also about the ones that should be implementing but aren't recognized by the donors yet. And that's the part that actually we are talking about. And like one is a very important one, which are the current implementators. So maybe the Youth Council Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina is not implementing any important regional project at the point, but it doesn't, it is not necessary that it doesn't have the know-how and the capacities to do so, but it was not still up until now maybe recognized by the donor community. And this platform as such should also bridge that gap. I mean that's the point. One thing is the implementators, which current ones, but the other thing is the gap that we want actually to fill in, and that's the communication gap, where you really have donors in the field working on certain topics that are not known with organizations which are strong in the field. And that is the thing that this platform can also bridge that gap. And I think this is not also something huge. It's just a small idea or path.
Thank you, Nedim, and you are totally right. And essentially, somehow that is the essence of the informal donor coordination mechanism. So why we are having informal donor coordination mechanism, then we are having informal donor coordination meetings, and then we are having this joint communique that we worked on, and then we are having the online platform. So somehow the mechanism itself actually strives right for these words that you just said. So basically the online platform should serve as a resource hub for everyone. So let's say Youth Council of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina is willing to work on some of the activities related to rural youth, and how to approach donors, and how, beside open calls that are available, how to approach maybe some of the interested donors who would be able to support your idea. You also, as a beneficiary of the platform, by using all these search tools that Biljana mentioned, can actually see which of the donor representatives are supporting those kind of projects, let's say in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and you might approach them later on as well. On the other side, the online platform will have this implementers part that Biljana mentioned, but the key point that you are actually stressing is that donor community should be also aware of the organizations that do not have currently some projects ongoing, but are willing to do so. And that is why actually we are gathered here today, and that is why we are having the youth panel. And that's why the participants of the youth panel are the representatives of the national youth councils and youth umbrella organizations, so as for you to have the opportunity to say all of these messages to the whole donor community being with us here today, but also the majority being online. So somehow we are trying to have the puzzle from each part, somehow completed, even though I believe it will not be possible to have it completed at any point, but we can really work on to have it like that all parts fit in. Nevertheless, what maybe we can think of, since the Youth Lab is working closely with the National Youth Councils and Youth Umbrella organizations, is somehow to have a promotion of the organizations on the very platform. Be it with as a kind of a document with the key information on what your focus is, or rather differently, what is your strategic thinking, having in mind that most of the youth councils have been supported with strategic plans in the past by the Youth Lab, but also by some of the other actors. Maybe we can also go in that direction and provide to donors like information where youth councils and youth umbrellas are standing now and where you would like to go, so that somehow in that way we can match the needs and also some of the possible interventions of the donors, if this makes sense. Petra, I believe that you are having one question from Lariana. Thank you.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Because I've been part of the entire donor mapping that we did in 2020 and early 2021, and how we approached all individual donor in each of the economies and then at the regional level, I just wanted to stress, but Ogni already mentioned the idea that initially the hub is a platform, an online tool to show who is doing what and where. So basically to be able to avoid potential overlapping, but also to build synergies. What Nedim is saying, it means to move the platform into another level, basically to do it a collaborative platform of meet and match. And this is something, of course, that the RRCC can explore, and of course it can be done. But in that case, it will be necessary to do a lot of promotion of the platform itself, but also to give the opportunity to organizations to register and showcase their work themselves, rather than expect from donors or the RRCC to do this for the others in order to be as inclusive as possible. So I think at this stage it's very important for all the donors to update the information they have already provided and have the platform up and running as it is, so in the sense of knowing who is doing what in which areas, and of course then explore the opportunity to make it as a more collaborative platform through this opportunity of showcasing each organization and offering also chances for what is called meet and match online. So donors identify organizations, or organizations identify their peers, and they develop projects together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions or comments. Okay, yes, please. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Mirs Biječević from the Youth Council of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I also just wanted to mention about that two-way communication. I think maybe that if that part is later incorporated, maybe it would have a bad, bad effect on how the platform is perceived by the organizations itself. Because I believe that that part that Nedim mentioned is really important for the organizations themselves to see the importance of the database and the website. Because if that part isn't there in the long run, maybe the organizations will lose the interest in that database, in the sense that they won't see how it directly matches them with the donors. It will just be a database. And if that part is incorporated maybe 1 year later, 2 years later, maybe it will be like from the operational side, it will be more difficult to jumpstart it all over again, to do the promotion all over again and so on. So just my suggestion would be maybe to try to do that part a little bit faster, this part from the testing and so on, and incorporating new possibilities and so on, to do it as fast as possible in order for it to have a better user experience. Because if it's done part by part, then people will, in the long run, they will probably miss out some of those parts that are incorporated later, who are, I think, the most important ones, because I see this as that two-way cooperation channel. And if that second part is missing, maybe in the long run, it will have a bad effect on this whole great project. So just that.
Certainly. So it was one of the conclusions of the first informal donor coordination meeting that the RCC will be working on this online platform, and that commitment really stays. So as I said, we want to keep this conversation going. We want to act fast, and we want to make sure that all of your feedback is incorporated in a timely manner in order to provide the best added value of the platform to all of you. Do we have any further comments or questions? I don't see any here, and I'm not getting any messages that anything online is popping up. So thank you very much for your participation in this part. I would like to invite you now to a very well-deserved coffee break. But before that, I want to emphasize once again what I have already said a couple of times, and that is that we do rely on all of you to get the best out of this platform, to disseminate the information about this platform on the social media, on the website, to make sure that everybody is aware of it, is familiar with it, and is using it actively. And now we go for the coffee break for those of you who are here with us in person, but also I invite all of you who are with us online to have some coffee and, meditate for about some 20 minutes. And then we will be back according to the agenda, at 20 minutes to 12. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us, and I hope that you enjoyed the coffee break at your homes, as we did here in the International Youth Center and Children Grbavica. We are continuing with the program, and we are very happy to have a youth panel, this time on the Informal Donor Coordination meeting. And therefore, we are very happy to have representatives of the National Youth Councils and Youth Umbrella organizations from the region with us, both joining us in person and virtually, for the opening Pandora's box between donor-driven and grassroots policy-making panel. The panel will be moderated by Ms. Milena Stosic, youth focal point from the OSCE mission to Serbia. So, Milena, I am giving the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Ognjen. It's a tremendous pleasure to be here today with you all in Sarajevo, but also we are all learning how these hybrid events could be fun and hopefully also interactive. At this panel, we will be talking about opening Pandora's box. It's a metaphorical title, but with a hope at the end, as we know that hope is what was left in the box. So I hope we leave this session and this meeting with such positive feelings. I am here on behalf of the OSCE mission to Serbia, but in my past, I also used to work in youth organizations and national youth councils. So hopefully this puts me in a place of somewhat objectivity, so to understand both standpoints. Nevertheless, the main stars of the panel today are on my right and left, but also online. From my left side, we have Miloš Kovačević from the Youth Council of Republika Srpska. Welcome, Miloš.
Hello.
And also Miljana Page from the National Youth Council of Serbia. And on my right, we have Angie Lipa from the National Youth Congress of Albania, as well as Kljajdi, who is also from Albania, who is very special for next year, as they have the super important title of the European Youth Capital. So we will be hearing more about that also. Nevertheless, we also have online Ditjon Fetahu from the Kosovar Youth Council. Ditjon, maybe you can wave for people. Hi. And also Mariana Angelova, who is Secretary General of the National Youth Council of Macedonia. Hi, Mariana, nice to have you as well in this hybrid format. As I said, we will be aiming today to have interactivity, not to just talk among ourselves, to go a little bit out of the box, to try not to have monologues, but dialogues, and hopefully this would be the manner of the coalition we're trying to build here among ourselves, and in a multi-sectorial way. So before starting, as we're talking here about National Youth Councils and umbrella organizations, I was thinking it would be interesting to engage you all from the get-go through something that it might be familiar to some of you, or maybe not. Anyhow, it's quite straightforward. So we're gonna have a very brief Mentimeter to see how we see and understand structures as national youth councils or umbrella organizations in our region and in general. So bear with me for a second. I'm gonna share the screen with you. And this is quite straightforward. You have the code up there. Okay. You see the code 98029721 from menti.com. So I ask you to join this one, either from your cell phone or your computers, and let's participate in this conversation together to the extent possible in this format. There is the first question, and they're not necessarily wrong answers or super right answers in this regard. This serves us more to open the conversation and create the baseline in terms of how do we understand the role of national youth councils. Okay, we see some of you joined. So we have following options. What are national youth councils? Are those like a bit bigger youth organizations? Are those highest representation bodies of youth? Perhaps youth voice of all youth organizations, or network of civil society organizations sharing common goals. And it's also fine if you're not entirely sure. We are also here to learn from each other today. But as far as I can tell, majority of you so far agree that these are highest representative bodies of youth. So this quality of representation is something perhaps that differs national youth councils from some others in the civil society sector. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. What is the main job of national youth councils, or, well, umbrella youth organizations as well? Not all of them are necessarily under this name or recognized as such. So do they advocate for youth interests among stakeholders, or their job is to travel a lot? I know that many do, and that's cool. Are they there to empower other youth organizations? Because usually they do have membership of organizations across geography or economy. Are they there to criticize institutions? Because this also sometimes happens. Or they're there to make policy proposals. So far, advocacy seems to be recognized as main job of national youth councils. And let me remind you, they do exist not only in Western Balkans region. It's a pretty standard format across the Europe, but also globally. Even some 15 years ago, Council of Europe had a recommendation to member states to actually support establishment of national youth councils on their territory. So it's something quite standard in a way. Nevertheless, we still learn, they develop over time, and somewhat they can have a little bit different mandate depending on where they are. Okay, advocacy it is. But now let's see what our representatives who actually work in national youth councils and similar structures have to say in terms of how they are perceived through this poll, but also how would briefly you explain why national youth councils are so special? What differs them from anybody else? Anybody cares to take the floor first? And Mariana and Dityon, I also have you on mind as well, so feel free to jump as well. Angie, please.
Thank you very much. It was nice to see the perceptions also of participants who are following us online. Before I start my word, I would like very much to thank RCC for their work and for having us here today. It's always a pleasure to be back and work on behalf of a Western Balkan Youth Lab initiative, and also in this very important meeting for us. What are youth umbrella organizations and why are they important? This is actually a question that a lot of people do, especially those working in local level. And in, let's say, answering this question, I'd like to mention three important points. The first one is that there is youth umbrella organizations are the one organizations or let's say structures that have a huge spectrum of actors within their, let's say, within their scope and within their mission. So basically, in my perception, is very important to have this kind of diversity, but also this huge amount of actors working in different fields and working also in different geographical areas. Especially national level, it's also very important for them as well to know that they have a backup support and that they have a very legitimate structure in which they can always count on for different issues. And this comes up to my point, which is that, to the second point, which is that youth umbrella organizations are the only legitimate structures that somehow have this direct dialogue and cooperation with their member organizations, and they can collect the information from the youth sector more
faster than the government institutions. They have less bureaucracies among them. So they have this, let's say, direct approach and communication with all the needs of youngsters coming from NGOs, informal groups, activists or student councils as well. And the third point is related to what, let's say, the majority of participants answered in Mentimeter is related to lobby and advocacy. It's always better to have a common voice toward state institutions and come up with, let's say, a very specific, direct, and also well-oriented and constructive approach toward them in order to better specify the youth needs, however, also to be very clear on what you ask from them. It's always better when you, let's say, connect and collect the voice of all members and go there and have this, let's say, direct dialogue with institutions rather than be there on small groups and have this, let's say, fragmented approach toward them. So this would be the main 3 points that I see Youth Umbrella as very important structures. Let's say not only national level, but in all the countries where they work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angie. I think you mentioned quite important point, and this is legitimacy that, if I understand correctly, comes from this representational capacity, right? Okay, Miljana, I see that you're eager.
Greetings from my side as well. It's really, I'm really glad to see you all gathered here in Sarajevo, but also online. Hopefully we'll meet each other soon in person, all of us. I would add, I totally agree with Angie. We had so many discussions earlier on the position on MYCs, on how can we make some synergies and act together in the region, youth policy especially. I would contribute with 2 points. One of them is independency. That is one thing that differs youth councils from other maybe organizations, because our mandate and our legitimacy and our credibility goes towards young people and towards youth organizations. And it's important to have all the resources and all the preconditions in order to be really an independent voice of youth. That is one thing that is always important, and we are very fond of this aspect of our work. Although sometimes, of course, it's very difficult to balance between different interests, different standpoints. To, of course, be independent in terms of financing, especially with some stakeholders. But that's the core mandate of NYCs, to be really independent and impartial, and to try to have an objective perspective that is in line with the interests of youth. And the second point that is very much important for COMS, National Youth Council of Serbia, is data-driven youth policy. And in that regard, it goes with our mandate to be resourceful to other youth organizations, but also to other stakeholders that are active in the youth field. So to provide data, to provide standards, to develop models, that is also important for us. And we are doing that based on wide consultations with all stakeholders. So I couldn't decide myself what to check, which box to check, because all those aspects that were on the Mentimeter are somehow connected with our primary work. But this connectivity, networking also contributes to the credibility that we want to advocate and that we want to direct to youth stakeholders.
This example, we do see how you're walking the talk on what we often hear, and this is evidence-based policy making. So in my view, it's quite responsible approach that you're taking. And as you said, independent, but then again, true to youth that you're representing. Milos, what would you add? Why NYCs are so special?
No, the small thing that, I mean, yeah, of course, first of all, I would like to greet all of you and to thank RCC for this great opportunity to be here today in Sarajevo in person, and also to say hello to everyone that couldn't make it to be with us in offline mode, but still I really look forward in some future activities where we will for sure gather. My colleagues basically mentioned a lot of aspects and a lot of important aspects of these issues. I would just add one small thing, and that is that like why I do think that youth councils, national youth councils, are really special and important in our societies. It's that because they are actually kind of showing the way where we as a society stand, on which point do we stand, because they can serve as a real incubator of the future leaders. So we can really we can really recognize some of the future leaders in those kind of councils and structures. And according to that, we can actually see how are we going to proceed in some near or far future at least. There at the same point, actually a great opportunity for those leaders to develop their skills and to develop actually their point of view, way of thinking, and by knowing, and we already mentioned these traveling aspects as well, actually to widen their horizons and to become more open-minded towards all of the like challenges that modern age is actually bringing towards us.
I like this metaphor, NYC as a lighthouse.
Yeah.
We have also Mariana and Dityon with us. Who would prefer to jump in now? Mariana, please, the floor is yours.
I can, yeah. First, let's do one sound check. Can everybody hear me well?
We do. Over here, all good.
That's great. I'd like to thank RCC and everyone for being there at the beginning. I also like to apologize for not being able to join everyone in Sarajevo. I will make it on the other occasion to meet everyone and discuss all of these things in person, because being online, in this case, it makes me special because we are the minority of people, but then I do believe it's better to be there with everyone else. On the point of conversation, I think everyone there summarized everything really well. I think also that the Mentimeter summarized everything, because they're not things that we do more or less. They are all of the things that the National Youth Councils do and that the National Youth Councils strive to. What I would like to add, or it may sound like repeating everything that everyone before me said, is that what makes National Youth Council special is the democratic processes and the democratic principles that we employ in our work and that we apply in our everyday job. And speaking about principles, I would like to underline especially the inclusivity of the National Youth Council, meaning we have a broad spectrum of member organizations that do work with different target groups and different groups of young people, including marginalized groups and youth from remote areas and young people with disabilities. And I believe that makes us really special, and that's something that we should strive to work on even more. But on the other hand, I do believe that what makes us also important is that our watchdog role that we have in the society, and being a corrective to the national institutions and the national policies, to get jointly with what I think Miljana said is the research-based approach and the often consulting young people on policies. But furthermore, we do have the capacity and we do have the knowledge on how to communicate different youth-related policies to the people that they're actually referring to and the people that they're affecting. So we are that connection between the national institutions, all of the decision-making stakeholders, and we should continue working that, bringing young people closer to the decision-making processes and providing meaningful participation in decision-making processes and also implementation of different programs.
Thank you so much, Mariana. I also agree that diversity is such an important value that I'm sure we all uphold here in this coalition. Dityon, please, the floor is yours now. Just unmute.
All right. Thank you very much, Milena. And thank you very much for the invitation on this, in my eyes, very important panel discussion. And fortunately, one of the first ones to be joining in. And I believe this is one of the most important inputs that it tells us and indicates that we should have more and more donor coordinating meetings, and not only with the donors, but as well with other NGOs, and especially in this case, the National Youth Councils or NYCs. Regarding to the question that was asked, I want to structure it this way. I believe that the National Youth Councils, one of the most important factors why we are special as NYCs, would be in 2 points: the promoting or sharing the information to the youngsters in our countries, and the secondly, getting that information or mapping out the situation as regard to the youth in our countries. I believe that the 3 main values of National Youth Councils, such as the field coverage, the idea of joining and working in most of the municipalities in our countries, if not all of them. Secondly, the grassroots approach that the National Youth Councils use, meaning that we get the first-hand information from our target group, which are the youngsters now. And in this manner, we are able to see what's happening with the youth and also share that information to the other partners, such as institutional partner or donor partners as well. And I believe this would be our third biggest value, the one that our colleague Angie already did mention, which is the several actors that are involved in the process or in the structure of National Youth Councils. That is of very great deal because as youngsters itself, it's very hard, I wouldn't say impossible, but it would be very hard to create and indicate in the society, but meaning that these kind of coordinated meeting and as well having the I'll use it metaphorically, the power of the institutions to create and then implement several initiatives in your country. That is one of the powers as well that the National Youth Councils have, and that would be the main values in my eyes why the National Youth Councils are more special than the other non-governmental organizations or other youth structures. So at the end of the day, what National Youth Council does best is that besides implementing and advocating for youth rights and representing them in several fields of policymaking, one of the best in my eyes would be the getting the information and as well sharing it with the youngsters in all municipalities in the representative economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing yet another angle to the table. On this, at this moment, I would also like to encourage all of you to use chat for comments or questions. It would be also useful if you can rename yourself in terms of affiliation so that we understand who is who, although I do recognize some people without that also. Let me just share this information for people who can't see it, such as our panelists here, that among participants, we have representatives such as my dear colleagues from different OSCE presences and missions in the region. UNDP I see JYZ, I see RAICO, I see also some national youth-related institutions, but really feel free to rename yourself or use chat to share anything in relation to your work or conversation that is taking place. And now, as they say, let's get down to business and let's get down to Mentimeter. We have discussed a little bit before this very meeting with representatives of national youth councils and umbrella organizations this important question And this is which common practices are perhaps not so supportive to the work of youth organizations and also national youth councils, but they do represent most of the time other youth organizations. Or as I also call it, everything you always wanted to say to donors but didn't have access to. So you can see here on this slide some of these answers that we discussed last week. We see here, for instance, this impression that sometimes youth organizations or NYCs are not being taken seriously, or at least this is the perception they have, maybe not seen as relevant partners from the side of donor community. We see a lot of comments related to financing, of course, for instance, co-financing maybe being a challenge for many, or that last grant installments being received after the project ends actually might be problematic for some because there's this expectation of liquidity and ability to advance costs. Also, and this is something that we did not hear now for the first time, discrepancy between expectation of professional youth sector and on the other side, limitations that we have in financing, again, human resources. One interesting comment was related to sub-granting schemes in which some bigger civil society organization gets to manage donor grants, but then there is a feeling that they often do not partner up with smaller CSOs, but rather only process grants further, and this does not enable growth and development. Again, internal procedures, amount of time required, willingness of donors to allocate funds towards human resources, etc., etc. You're also free to contribute now with any other inputs in this regard for participants with us who are coming from youth civil society and NYCs and are not necessarily in the room. So we get to learn more about this. And for everybody else, especially donor community, please feel free to comment on this and being in the chat or by raising your hand. We do see here if you want to take the floor. So let's have a dialogue. But before going there, I would like to hear comments also from our panelists in this regard, which practices are not so supportive when it comes to relationship among youth sector, youth civil society sector and donor community. And maybe this time around we start from panelists who are with us online. So maybe Mariana, from you, if you agree.
Yeah, sure. I was just taking notes on this, and I do agree with most of the things that are mentioned in Mentimeter, but yeah, practically I do agree with most of the things that are mentioned in Mentimeter. And how I would summarize this is what I think that the most unsupportive practice is that donor-driven work of the National Youth Councils, meaning we don't have other additional support from national institutions, which I believe should be the biggest supporters of national youth councils, and putting us in a position to work based on grants and projects supported by donors. What this does, and what we've noticed in the National Youth Council of Macedonia, is that this puts us in a position to compete with our member organizations in open calls for projects, which is in some terms becoming an issue, having in mind that all youth organizations do work on important issues for young people and that the funds are limited. So how we try to mitigate this is working on projects in partnership with our member organizations, but yet there are more than, for example, in North Macedonia, more than 50 youth organizations that do actively work with young people, and there are not enough funds for that. On the other hand, one of the other things that I think it's important for national youth councils to do is to support their member organizations and also help them build their capacities in order for them to be capable of working on donor-based projects and not just being grassroots organizations that do have some ad hoc activities. And for that reason, national youth councils do need funds for capacity building of youth organizations, having in mind that most of the national youth councils are larger organizations with good capacities and capable of implementing such activities and capable of helping their member organizations. So to summarize, what I would say to the donor community is that national youth councils need structural or institutional support in order to implement and achieve their missions better and do their core activities.
Thank you so much, Mariana, for highlighting this, but also for immediately offering a constructive approach and solution towards what national youth councils would be seen as support to their work and to implementation of their core mandate. Dityan, please.
Thank you very much. I think it's very tough for my side to start dividing the problems that we have in miscommunication with the donor, because I believe all of them, they have a great impact in the overall implementation of the project at the first beginning, which is our shared interest. But then, of course, what are we actually doing for the youth society in our economic level? I did write in the Mentimeter the sentence that says there is a difference between contracting party and the partner, and I believe much so, because as Ms. Mariana said before me, we should be driven more we're talking about national youth councils, and I believe that the projects or the donors giving projects to the national youth councils should be more driven in the program level than in the project level, because in that manner, in the overall experience that we have as National Youth Council from Kosovo, it's been very tough to really implement the strategy of the national youth councils, since you're working on project-based level and you're always rethinking, and then you will always need to change a bit of your project, and then it doesn't fulfill the idea of your strategy. So I believe this is a very big issue, the need to adapt the projects in order to implement them as so, because it doesn't indicate it doesn't make a better strategy implementation at the first beginning. Secondly, I would like to raise the point of the willingness to make changes even after the project has been taken. Especially during the 2020, when the COVID pandemic hit us, we had a lot of issues and troubles regarding changes and making amendments on our actual project that were already being implemented. And I believe that should have been a lesson learned for the years to come in our cooperation, because if there is a change in the society, even if it wasn't foreseen in the project, I believe that it's very important for us to take a knee and then step back and see what we can do differently with the project in order to make sure that the target group is getting the beneficiaries that were already foreseen with the project. Because if there was a change through the implementation of the project, there is going to be a change in the beneficiaries that the target group is getting as well. Third, but maybe not the least, I would like to get these points together. That would be conducting joint goals with the donors, and as well the report sharing. I would like to tackle the donor community, but as well the NGO and the National Youth Council as well from my side, because I believe this is where we lack a bit as well. There are several reports and research papers that we do throughout the year. And I really believe that we as NYC, we try to do our best on PRing them while sharing them. Though that's an indicator that is telling us that that's not enough. These reports are not going to the eyes and ears of our institutional partner and all donor community. And I believe that it's very important for us to find new ways of sharing these kind of reports, because at the end of the day is that grassroots approach. So is that information that we have directly from our target group, and then in the other hand, for donors and institutional partners, that would be what they need in order to make a better impact. And in this regard, the conducting of joint goals would indicate to better implement the projects from the national councils, but as well to have a greater impact in that target group. Because if we would have joint goals regarding based on the needs that the youngsters have, it would be easier and much more beneficiary for the target group.
Thank you so much, Dityon. It's very useful to learn what would make your work more effective and where the potential obstacles. Before allowing for one more comment from this side, I would like to check if anybody from our participants from donor community would like to comment on what you heard and saw so far. It would be quite beneficial to also hear some of your impressions or your perspectives on this. We also do have our own challenges and our own rules from our side. I believe it's rarely just a matter of wanting to be a big bureaucracy and wanting to make these obstacles to the youth sector. But please, if any of you would like to make a comment on what you saw and heard, we do have time for that. Otherwise, I know that Milos also wants to give some comments on what is not supportive.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you so much. Regarding all of this that we already heard, I'm like trying to connect all the dots and to think more from the perspective of in the role that I am today here, like representing Youth Council of Republic of Srpska. And of course, you're right, Milena, when you say that you also as a donor community and somebody that is having their own, like issues and obstacles in their work and priorities and goals to achieve. So it's actually a complex situation. But speaking from the perspective of the NYC, one of the NYCs in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I would say like that the most challenging part is actually of having this, of not having the clear border between the roles of different kind of NGOs. So basically, as we saw on the first slide of the Mentimeter, there is a common, like understanding of who we are and what do we do actually in this room and in online zone of this today's event. But unfortunately, I do think that there is no common actually understanding of what are the real role of NYCs. And what are the differences between NYCs? What should we do? What is our like real role in comparing with, let's say, like just regular CSOs or some youth organizations, youth-led organizations, or something like that. So on the beginning, I think we have to be clear within that part. Also, there is a lot of different donors that are actually having their own, like kind of interests and goals and priorities. And in this specific matter, one youth NGO or one national youth council, in order to survive, let's say, we have to adjust and we have to adopt towards this kind of goals and priorities that are being set by the donor community, not by us. In this specific case, we often do have to change our priorities, our own priorities, and in this manner, in this specific situation, we are not actually allowed, and we do not have enough space to think of, like inside perspective, like what are we actually about to do? Because on the beginning of the story, we are a network of the organizations. As somebody on the beginning already mentioned, we do have our member organizations, and our member organizations are having their expectations from us. as national youth councils. So we have to have that clear in our heads, in our minds. So those are one of the issues that I can see, that I can comment on. Also, I would say that in order to, let's say, as I already mentioned, to survive, we have to seek for different kind of, like donor opportunities, funds available for us. Sorry, and in this kind of situation, most of the donors are pretty much really bureaucratic. So young people are not eager on paperwork. That's something what I really know from the experience. I've been for many years working with young people. Whenever it comes to some paperwork, like having this stamped, having this scanned, copied, brought to the post office, it's a complete mess. So I think that we have to think towards this digitalization and simplifying the rules, because we do have the tools in our hands. That can be the solution of this, for example, of this problem. But not to, as I really like to say, like seeing the young people from the Western Balkan, I can mention, and I can see that young people from this region are almost always part of solution and almost never part of the problem. So in this specific regard, I would comment also on some kind of solutions, if I may, if we do have, that in plan now. So for example, we had the chance to see and to hear this presentation about the platform in the first part of today's event. The thing that I was thinking in that moment was how great would it be to use this kind of platform as a unique space to set the standards of applying. Like from the perspective of a young person that deals with some projects inside of organization, it would be much more easier if I have all of the donors on one place and if I have the same standards toward all of them. And of course, those standards can be agreed upon, like donors community. So let's say we put a line and all of us know in advance what do we have to achieve in order to get some funds and an opportunity. Of course, on the other hand, we cannot exclude the role and the importance of institutions in respecting us, in supporting us. But it can be also a gap for all of us, because often when it comes to institutions and when it comes to authorities, it also comes about politics. So not to be actually trapped in this kind of, let's say, cooperation, we have to be clear that the institutions have to be obliged by the laws, by the, some official documents to provide us with the basic ground-based level of support in order to work and in order to be able to actually be in our role, in our position. And everything else has to be built upon that. Because if there is this balance between supporting from institutions and the donor community, then we are being actually tracked in one way or in another way. So maybe this platform can really serve as a great tool and as a great space sometimes in the future for all of us not to be bothered about different procedures of different donors, but to have really everything on the same place, and to be clear and simple for all of us to be on the same page of this as well. Last but not the least, I would like to actually support and to comment that it is really important to invest in the capacities, because we saw from the examples of the national youth councils from the region, wherever we have capable secretariat that is functional, there are the projects and there is the activity. Where we don't have secretariat as a body that works no matter on the policy level of the national youth councils, we have some kind of issue and we have some kind of problem. So we have to be clear about also supporting secretariats in this specific manner. And also we have to think in advance of how to support national youth councils in order to provide them with the opportunity to run long-term projects, not short-term, not projects of 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, but how to really ensure that youth councils are capable of dealing with the projects of 3 years, 5 years, because in this kind of period, the real change can be visible. It cannot be visible if we implement a project of 6 months. Some of results can be visible, but only after, I would say, 1 year, 2 years, and etc.
Thank you very much, Milos, for all of this and for actually making a good transition for the next bit of our conversation, which is more about what kind of good practices we know, and what is recommendable. You now see the next collection of ideas here, also resulting from some of our previous conversations. So, for instance, some of the ideas we already heard from Milos, especially in terms of digitalizing processes, having structural grants toward youth umbrella organizations so that they can actually complete their role, their core mandate, which is, I think, also in relation to support to participation of NYCs in normative processes, something that is not necessarily so visible, so photogenic in a way, doesn't breed maybe immediate results, but do require somebody's time, expertise, and other resources. Also, among other things, we see here idea about flexibility of adjusting to the changing context during project implementation. So we are not super strict about indicators we had at the beginning, because things do change, and we saw how much during the pandemic, for instance. Important one I see here is mutual trust and trust in the process, and also partnership, the manner of work that assumes partnership or co-creation in projects. And here is with the caps lock, as Milos was underlining it, rather programs than projects. So a lot of quite concrete ideas, I would say, at the same time reflecting what are the issues, what are the obstacles, and this is the other side of the mirror, let's say. Milena, I see you ready to comment on this.
Sure. Very gladly. I would like to return on the first point that we made as a panel, that NYCs are advocacy platforms in its core of programs and activities. So in order to be successful in advocacy, you really need to have time. So you need, because advocacy changes, it really goes in three directions. First one, normative, second one, institution, and the third one, always the tough one, the change in attitudes of the society as a whole, not only of young people. So in order to do all those steps, in order to be successful, in order to have a change that you want to achieve as an NYCs, in order to have rights of young people ensured and secure, you really need to have these long-term projects. So that is programs, the long-term programs, because, for example, in the case and in the experience of the NYCs of Serbia, of COMS, in order to have the debate about internships, and in order to have this normative, I'm just now strengthening this aspect that we tackled. So we are now in the process of normative change in order to have fair internships for young people. It took us 2 years to have this change, and the following task of us is, of course, to be to have this law acceptable by the business society, by all the people, by young people, in order to ensure their rights. So it's really a process that it takes at least 4 or 5 years. And in order to be successful in this, it really takes time, and as you said, it not only takes resources like having budget lines for meetings. It takes time. It takes human resources, in particular, of people that are willing to dedicate all their working day in order to sometimes, as a result, even get a phone call with the right people. So sometimes it takes 8 working hours in order to get the phone call of one person. So, and there are a lot of examples that really underline this in the work of all NYCs and Youth Umbrella Organization. Also, one of the things that is really good example, and some donors of COMS really practice it in their work, is flexibility. So those advocacy efforts really are happening in the societal, economic, and political context that is changing. So in order to be successful, you probably have to change some activities, you need to change the approach. Sometimes you have to even change these advocacy strategies in order to be successful, in order to achieve change. So in that regards, to be aware of the flexible approaches and to be open to new suggestions, ideas during the project implementation is something that is really important. And for NYCs, it provides really an outstanding opportunity to be successful in their work and in order to have better results. And this support in normative processes is always, I would say, free of charge for NYCs, because we do that in our volunteer time usually, because secretariats are of course important, but in the current stages of affairs, it's really secretariats are implementing projects and they're doing this process related things in the free time. So basically volunteering, and
there is free time, huh?
Yes, and that is really, I mean, it's great that for example COMS is invited in many working groups on different issues. It's really a step forward of youth policy in the Republic of Serbia, I would say. But it's really, you put your credibility in line if you're participating and you do not have the resources to participate in the working groups. Currently, there are a few public debates about the normative changes, about social entrepreneurship, about internships. We will soon have a debate, public debate on the national youth strategy, and we have only few people that we can really rely upon in order to really actively follow the process from the beginning until the end. So in matters of credibility and in matters of resources, it's really it should be really there is a gap to fulfill in order to be successful in that regard. And I really believe that the international community especially, and many donors that are already working with the institution can provide civil society and NYCs and youth organizations that are working at the local level with that kind of support, because they're already involved in their partnership with institutions on those normative changes. But in order to ensure that we have still acceptance of young people and their inclusion in active participation in these processes, and in the matter in the end the better result, because they will provide significant input, we need to also have that kind of support and that kind of flexibility in terms of our work as well. Yes, the last point is trust in process and partnerships, and we do cooperate with many maybe bigger civil society organizations that are maybe our member organization as well, such as Belgrade Open School and civic institutions, because they have the resources to manage a significant grant and to let the other stakeholders dealing with their mandate and their issues. So in those huge projects that we cannot implement as NYC, we have our part in those advocacy related issues that are sometimes related to the European integration, but also to other maybe broader topics, not only youth related topics, but to be recognized in those grant schemes and to be also recognized in those structural institutional grants that will provide NYC to be credible and voice of youth in the right manner, I would say. So for now, that's for my side.
Thank you so much, Miljan. I think we all learned a lot from all of these points you made. I'm sure RCC took a lot of notes. We all should, I guess. But Angie would like to add some more.
If I can just add two small comments from the ones that were not, let's say, mentioned from my colleagues. I do not want to repeat their points, but maybe another thing that can be improved, or that I think that I would like to drive as a recommendation in this and as a suggestion, is that what Milos just mentioned a bit earlier regarding the priorities that the donors have among them and their work, and the priorities that youth umbrella organizations have. I think it is important that the donors include youth umbrella organizations as well in these consultative meetings while drafting their strategic priorities for their work in long term or in midterm, in order to have this kind of synergy, because our member organizations sometimes working in local level are a bit, let's say, differentiated from what donor community, and it's a bit difficult for them to follow all the developments of the donors and all the work that they do. And for us, it is, of course, a responsibility to inform them for the opportunities that are coming and in order for them to adjust. So I think it would be good to sit in a table and consult how to find, let's say, a middle point, the golden middle for both sides, in order to have a win-win situation, also from the donor community, but also from youth umbrella organizations. And another suggestion would be that it is important for youth umbrella organizations as well to follow the latest developments, not only on the youth sector, but also on some other sectorial approach, such as economy, for example, and digital agenda, and all these political agendas that are now being developed, not only from EU as a main donor, but also from different other donors. And in this case, I think that donor community can facilitate at least the participation of young youth umbrella organizations in these kind of events, in these kind of, let's say, summits, or in these kind of tables that are organized, in order for us to be informed, but why not also be active in discussions and reveal our comments and suggestions toward them. So I think these are very small things, but also very important for our work to create synergy, coordination, avoid overlapping, and of course inform the member organizations working in local level in order for them to be able and understand what is happening in macro level as well.
Small things, but potentially would be the big effects.
Yes.
Thank you also for mentioning this layer about youth mainstreaming in programming, which I find to be so important. And we at the OSCE mission to Serbia are trying to actively apply it. I think it's important to have, as you said, this awareness on other programs and other areas where young people and youth sector as such can and should have a say. And there is also support in donor community that comes not only from youth targeted programming, but also from some other aspects, as you named some of them. Now again, there is an opportunity for participants, especially from donor community, if you would like to share some of your views on what was discussed so far. I know that there actually are some examples of good practice and some recommendable approaches that some of you or some of us are applying already. It would be nice to hear them again, or maybe for the first time. We have GYZ here with without microphone. Thank you, Yasmin.
Okay. No problem. Hi again from my side. I mean, it's really interesting to hear all the discussion and all the inputs from the colleagues. I have to say I had some already discussions during the coffee break with some of you, and we were discussing actually about the support, for example, and the way that GIZ in this case is doing in the region. I have to say that unfortunately, I mean, when it comes to youth, it is not the primary focus of GIZ or what we are doing here. But now, since we are also more and more implementing EU project, we are, so to say, coming back. I'm happy to say that we are coming back to this topic. And again, I come back to our Western Balkan School Exchange Scheme, which we are implementing together with the Regional Youth Cooperation Office. And then I come to the point what you were discussing in terms of the long-term programs, the flexibility, and we are really trying to act in this way. So, for example, now the project that we are having, it's a 3-year project that we are implementing jointly, and we are really trying to be, even though the project preparation took basically, well, even more than 1 year, and we have a set of indicators, we have all the activities, we are still changing them. And I think this is at least we are trying to act in this way, the positive side of GIZ, that we are flexible in that regard. So we are really trying to reflect on the current situation, on the changes which are happening on the field, and then respond in a way that we are able to change indicators if necessary, that we are able to change activities. And I think this is also now reflected, for example, what we also discussed in the coffee break about the new super schools program that TRICO is now implementing, where we saw, for example, that in the previous calls that TRICO has done, that simply the schools did not have the capacities to apply, to write project proposals, to do budgets. So we said, okay, let's simplify it. Let's make it so that any school, any teacher can apply in a very easy process, but by simply answering 7 questions basically, and then being able to participate in the scheme. So we are able there to be flexible, to learn, to adapt. And this is, again, I mean, also, let's say, a message to all the other colleagues and all the other donor organizations that, as all of you have been saying, that this is really necessary. Because, I mean, yes, we need rules, and we all have our bureaucracies and our, so to say, I mean, especially financial regulations, but we should also be aware of the fact that on the other side, it's also people are involved, so that, and not everyone has the capacity or basically has had the time to learn how to deal with 1 million forms, Excel sheets, Prague rules, etc., etc. So, I mean, definitely, I mean, I hear what you are saying, and I have to say that at least from GIZ perspective, we are trying to act in this way. Nevertheless, I have to also be critical. I mean, we are also a very big organization, very bureaucratic. So it's always a, so to say, a fight between this, you know, trying to simplify things, and on the other hand, somewhere either after the audits or something like this, you know, things, new regulation being added on. So it's a constant fight in that regard.
Indeed, I second that thought. Thank you so much for bringing this example to the table. I believe it really reflects the needs-based approach. We have another comment from the National Youth Council of Federation.
Thank you. Mayers again from the Youth Council of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm really happy that we have the opportunity here to have the donor community listen to the National Youth Councils maybe and their experiences. And also in that sense, I think that just having this database isn't really enough, but we have to, in some sense, see how the donor community is how much is it accessible to the youth organizations? So in that sense, I would maybe like to ask the representatives of the youth councils here to maybe give their perspective on how the donor community can become closer to youth, how those calls can be more open for youth organizations, how can they more support the needs of the youth councils, because like already mentioned, some processes take 3 years, 4 years to change something. Like, are those calls that we have now, like for 6 months, 1 year, are there like what we need, or are those calls what youth organizations on the local level maybe need, and so on? So maybe I would like to use this opportunity just like to maybe share those like expectations from our side, like what do we want to see maybe from the donor community, and how can we work better together in the future? That's a question for everyone.
Thank you for that question. I think that we can actually merge it with the following bit of this panel, which is actually asking how this broad coalition on youth can be operationalized. And I think you were actually asking in the same direction. This is definitely one angle of that story. I invite you all here and also online to join Menti on this question, and please write down any ideas you have. This is something that could be potential follow-up, that could mark following steps on this coalition that we just started, and to have some concrete results, some concrete effects. In the meanwhile, while we also wait for your inputs on the screen, I would also like to hear, including the question that we heard from the floor from our panelists here. Anybody?
Well,
if I may continue, first of all, I'd like to thank RCC for bringing us together here in Sarajevo. It's always nice to be here. As well, congratulate you on the work that you've been carrying out throughout the past years, as well as with Western Balkans Youth Lab, as well as salute my colleague Angie for her work in representing the National Youth Congress of Albania in Western Balkans Youth Lab as well. When it comes to coordinating with donors and collaborating and cooperating further with different donors and creating programs, we have an experience that makes it possible to go out and reach more and more partners and create more partnerships, but it comes from years of trying to create this experience, years of trying to create this base, this foundation that makes it possible nowadays. But it, of course, was very difficult in the beginning. The staff was faced with many challenges to present the idea, to present the things that would have been done and that were actually done in the previous years by the National Youth Congress of Albania, and to reach out to partners and to different stakeholders in communities, even in the international arena. Colleagues here in the panel mentioned previously that from the national youth structures or youth umbrella organizations, a lot of things are expected from the community, from the member organizations, from staff members as well, from boards, and from everyone. Everyone expects a lot because, as it is the case in the National Youth Congress of Albania, but I believe it's also the case in the national youth structures in all of the Western Balkan countries, we have a wide mission that that ensures the development and the advancement of youth status in each of our communities. And in making that possible, in our mission, a lot of things have to be done. It's not just advocacy, but of course it is advocacy. It's structured dialogue. It's a common vision for youth. It's creating a legacy, having programs, implementing projects, raising the capacities of member organizations. So it's a wide mission, it's a wide spectrum of activities, and in able to do so, you need a lot of support. And it is hard to create that support if you haven't done it before, or if there is no precedent in the country before. And so in order to do that, you have to start slowly, and to start slowly you need or if you do not have the wide and enough support, then you also need a small staff. As Milos said, it's a lot of strain in the secretariat as well to carry out good work and with few resources. So of course, a lot of things have to be done in that manner in order to push things forward. In the panel was also discussed the concept of working in the free time in other duties that the youth umbrella organization has to carry out. So it's not just the projects that we implement, but it's also the other duties. Each of us has another title or a position in the structure of the secretariat. So it's not just carrying out the duties of project coordinator. So it's all of things related together to push things forward for the member organizations, for other stakeholders involved in all of the issues or in all of the things that we would like to push forward. When you presented me, you also mentioned the European Youth Capital. It's a title that was given to Tirana for year 2022. The National Youth Congress of Albania started working on researching what it meant since 2018, and we met with partners, or what became partners later on. We met with previous or upcoming European Youth Capitals in 2018 and 2019, when we met with Novi Sad, with other European Youth Capital cities, to learn what it meant, to learn how we can apply, to research further, to see what stakeholders we should reach out. And we continue to partnership with the municipality of Tirana as well, and we collaborated and wrote a program called Activate with 8 different points, a very wide and ambitious program which will be implemented for the next year. We were awarded with the title by the European Youth Forum by the end of 2019, and from then until now we've been making sure that everything is prepared and ready to go for the upcoming year. Fortunately, we have enough resources to employ more people, and it will be a staff of 30 people that will be engaged in implementing the program of the European Youth Capital. And they will, of course, be engaged in different duties of the National Youth Congress of Albania, but each of employees has a certain responsibility when it comes to one of the 8 points of the programs or different duties such as media relations, law experts, and everyone that will be involved in different aspects. The program ensures creating opportunities for young people in Tirana, and we also looking for mechanisms to make sure that from other cities can apply as well. And we're, as we've discussed with COMS and with the youth umbrella organizations in the Western Balkans, to find ways to also collaborate in Tirana and in other cities in Western Balkans within the framework of the European Youth Capital. So we're always finding ways to make sure that more and more things get done, more and more opportunities get created, and youngsters of Albania, but not only, can find ways to live in this region and share their potential, find out what they can do and find out how they can do it. So it's not just about giving young people grants and finding ways or giving them money to find ways to implement their ideas, but also to connecting them with the right people in finding out how can they implement their ideas, on how they can interact and network with each other. And it's also another point that we emphasized a lot. It's not, we're not trying to create a great year of 2022, but we're trying to create a starting year of 2022. So creating a legacy, a tradition of having every year as wide of a program, as wide of probably not as wide, but maintaining the secretariat, the staff, the budget, and pushing forward with different partners and maintaining partnerships that will be created for the next year. So making sure it's a continuous work. It's not just opportunities for 2022, but it continues to do so in 2023, 2024, and going on. And in this way, also giving a good example on how we can, how other cities in Albania, but also in the Western Balkans can work together and find ways to give those opportunities to youngsters in all of the region.
Sustainability. Thank you so much, Heidi. It is, and congratulations again for the title. It's a big thing, I believe, not only for Tirana or Albania, but for the entire region, as you said, same as Novi Sad was. Yeah. And hopefully we see more of the cities in our region having the title in the future. Perhaps one of the ideas in relation to the question that we had on the screen on operationalization of coalition could be linked maybe with the fact that Tirana is a youth capital. So feel free to enter the Mentimeter and put some ideas in there. What we had seen so far, a lot of ideas are actually related to periodic meetings, more meetings, more communication among youth sector or national youth councils and the donor community. More travel, Miller says. Yeah, absolutely. I second that. So also another idea is triangle coordination structure between NGO, donor, and institution. This is very valid point, very interesting one, especially as in regard to the topic that Miljana was talking about, and this is creation of normative documents, normative processes in general. Organizing the next donor meeting in partnership with NYC, that's a nice one. Inclusion of NYCs and youth organizations in strategic planning and implementation of donor programs. A lot of ideas to digest on, but let's hear more comments, concrete ideas on this broad coalition from our panelists. Do we maybe have Mariana or Dityon willing to take the floor now?
Yes, if I may, Iliana.
Please.
All right, thank you. I would like to continue maybe in that regard of the comment for the triangle connection of these three important actors. The idea of that triangle coordination, I believe it's of great importance because it brings together three main actors in regard to making changes in the society. The first one would be the information part. As I said before, the NGOs are, in this matter, the national youth councils are the organizations and the structures of youth that do have the information from the grassroots approach. So I believe one of the main important things that the national youth councils can bring to this table of coordination for the institution, the donors, that would be the information. On the other hand, when you see the institution, in my eyes, they have the power of making the changes as it in regard to creating the new policies and amending the already existing ones, and of course, seeing other potential changes and potential activities that they can do as institutional level in order to further benefit and also put in a better position the target group. So in my eyes, the second important one would be the institution, and especially the ones that deal directly with youth, such as the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Labor Market, and so on and so on and so on. While the third, but not less important in this triangle, because I believe they have the same amount of let's say needness in this triangle, that would be the donor, or in my eyes the money, or in my eyes the rotor or the motor of making these changes in this society. Because even if we have the information and we do have the willingness in the power position from the institution to do changes, it is very much impossible to do so without the money that would put this whole idea of implementing youth agendas through the money that is crucial to start and also finish these processes. So I think that it's very important for us in each economy to try and seek these kind of structures where national youth councils are also one of the triangle as one of the most important ones in regard to the information. If we would be able to have this kind of structures, this kind of coordination structure, I would say, it would really much easier. It would make it easier for us to communicate with one another firstly, and then that would open the road to creating better partnerships, creating bigger activities, creating bigger indicating projects that we call them programs, and then through these coordination, we could also put this in another level, not only in the economy level, but as well in the regional or the national level, where we could as well create joint groups and then work together in joint or target goals that we create together. But that's important, communicating and creating and co-creating joint activities and goals in order to reach them all together.
Thank you so much, Dityon. Now back to the room and to Angie. What would be your proposal?
Yeah, going in line with what Dityon said, he made a very good transition to my point. Is that how can we further operationalization this kind of coalition that we have? We have a very good example of Western Balkan Youth Lab, which was based on the principle of co-management and co-creation. And I think despite that there was no direct support or granting scheme toward organizations, but somehow we were supported toward the needs that we had in each of the economies and in each of our, let's say, in state level. And maybe these kind of initiatives might further continue. Maybe donors in the future, Emiliana mentioned a bit, having trust and trusting in the process, but trust somehow needs time to be created, and of course capacities and skills from both sides. But also this more youth-friendly approach and somehow mentoring and supporting, not in a direct way, but maybe indirectly, the needs that youth umbrella organizations have and their member, let's say, organizations. For example, we also have a good, let's say, practice from our donor community in Albania, which, let's say, has supported National Youth Congress of Albania from the beginning. And Clyde mentioned a bit that we have had this support from German foundations from the very beginning, but also having their, mentoring throughout the process and having and creating capacities of all the structures, like such as secretariat, and also offering and helping us with expertise toward the needs that we have had as structures, but also the members have had. So maybe this might be a good approach to start creating this trust, and maybe in the future we can go up what Milos mentioned, creating programs and sustainability. So it's good to have this kind of facilitation in the beginning to start the process and communication and dialogue, and see, of course, based on the results that are produced, see the further continuation of the long-term partnerships. And this would be my last point. Me and Clyde have to say thank you very much to RCC and all the colleagues, but we now have to leave. It was very pleasure, and I think that we all come up with very constructive approach in the future and maybe find some common solutions as we have done already. Thank you from our side, and it was a very pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Angie, and for very interesting points you made. I think it's so important to recognize that national youth councils, but also youth organizations, are not only seeking grants, as you said, but also there is different kinds of support that can be useful and beneficial to their work. Now we can maybe go back to Mariana. What would be your proposal in terms of how this coalition could work further?
Well, my proposal goes more into the direction of the work of the National Youth Council as is. It's been my experience working for the National Youth Council of Macedonia that the more recognizable the organization becomes as a youth representative body, and that we become as people that know youth-related issues and policies, and we develop different and pilot different mechanisms for everything related to youth, the more we get consulted in everything. So as everybody before mentioned, it's really important in order to operationalize this coalition on youth. It's really important to have strong communication and strong cooperation. And to have that, we have to be considered as equal, meaning national youth councils should be recognized as representative bodies of young people, and we should work strongly towards that. And we should be heard in terms of that, having that meaningful participation and meaningful decision-making power when it comes to either planning or programming by donors, but also by national institutions when developing youth-related policies. So to summarize, work on our capacities, which will make us more relevant in each field.
Thank you very much, Mariana, for being as concrete. We still didn't hear from Milos and Miljana.
Ladies first.
Go ahead.
It's either way, ladies first. Okay, yeah, thanks. I would actually, on the beginning, I would stick to the question that Meris raised.
Please.
Yeah. Also, when it comes to some maybe good examples of good practice, how can we improve, and what can we do in order to have this maybe better connection with the donor community? I know that there is this good example of practices where there are like these info days. Mm-hmm. So basically you are available before applying for a specific grant to ask the questions and to actually get all of the answers that you need in order to fulfill the full application and to proceed on the right way, because we are dealing a lot with this issue of project management inside of our capacities. And I have to be honest, it's not always about the donors. I mean, we are a bit maybe criticizing here the donor community, but we have to be critical also towards ourselves. Mm-hmm. We often do not have this way of capacities and thinking in this direction of building our own capacities, and we are not thinking about these specific aspects. Often, what's happened often, it's actually that we do have kind of mixing the tasks between ourselves. So we don't know, are we actually project managers, project officers? Are we writing the projects? Are we implementing the projects? Are we PRs? Are we making design for our social network? So we are doing actually a bit of all of it. And the thing that actually happened in my organization, the organization that is membering of organization of Youth Council, is that we understood that there is not enough capacity for us that are present in organization to write the projects. So what we did, we actually asked some of our colleagues with some extra free time, would you write a project for us? So would you become our external expert in the field of project management? Because we don't have enough time and we don't have our personal and internal capacities of dealing with writing the project at the same time when we have like 2 or 3 ongoing projects in our organization. And this is actually how it worked, and it went really well. I think we delivered a great project. This person, our external expert, actually was participating in this info session about the project issues. She did all the work like perfectly. I think we have a perfect project. We are now waiting for the results. And I think this is the way that we can actually proceed in the future, even within our councils. And in order to connect these kind of answers with the question of the second part of this small talk in here, I would say that actually talking specifically on how can we operationalize this way of connectivity and cooperation in this regards, is that maybe we can think on the same page and on the same level as we were thinking, I mean, as the RCC crew was thinking when establishing these groups of experts. So why not? We can maybe think of having this group of experts within our organizations, donor community, within Western Balkan region, and those can be the people that are dealing with project management in the manner of writing the projects. Why and how? On specific, let's say, on the base ground of all the people from the national youth councils that will just provide the updates on the programmatic issues, directions, strategic points of view of the national youth councils, in order to have this group of experts delivering and designing the projects that will be applied to the donors. So maybe that this can be also like some kind of more specific suggestion from my side in this panel.
Thank you for that. As specific we can go, I think there is a better chance that that something is later on implemented. But we have Nedim in the room as well, who would like to reflect on this question, I assume. Maybe we can also later on hear from Ognjen to reflect on everything we got in this slide and in this part when it comes to next steps within the coalition itself.
Yes, I'll just shortly like come in, because we're talking about specific things and like maybe examples also of good practice. And because we are in Sarajevo physically, at least, something which was a really turning point also in the context of the youth councils and the help that all of the 3 youth councils, because we have the 3 youth councils in Bosnia and Herzegovina actually covering the whole territory. We have collaborated together, and like it is not often that the donor community and the international community also recognizes the potential and the importance of actually investing in youth organizations, and actually the experience of especially what Miloš was saying, and the Youth Council of Federation and Youth Council of Republic of Srpska and Brčko district also is a concrete also thing that I would like to mention, that one of the first UN organizations in Bosnia and Herzegovina, IOM, through its program in Bosnia and Herzegovina Resilience Initiative, actually came to the youth councils and through our cooperation said, okay, we really believe that the thing that you are working on and dealing with is hard, and it's a hard job. The youth organizing is hard, we know it, and it's youth also advocating for youth policies is also hard, and we understand that your capacities in doing that, what Miloš was saying, are not maybe also well developed. And then we started negotiating from that, and we as a youth councils didn't receive some huge applications that we have to fill out in and see, okay, it is really important now to fill, and we have lost a month on preparing a project. No, it was a consultation process. And it was an example of how bigger organizations, especially UN organizations, but also an example of how donor community as such should approach to youth councils as a structures and actually come and see what happens. And I must say, like from that example, because we have started that collaboration in 2019, then in 2020 also, now we can really see a significant change. All of the three of youth councils in Bosnia and Herzegovina have never cooperated this much as now. We are like seeing each other constantly, working together, planning projects. Actually, this weekend we also have a joint tomorrow. We have a joint meeting of all of the three councils and young people from all of the structures, and we are actually planning on the work that we will do in the next year. I think that is not something that we could have talked about as a reality in 2018. It was not even close to what we have now, and that is a huge step forward. And that was the only reason why that happened, is because of the trust that we have built among each other, the youth councils, the youth-led organizations in general, and the trust it has been built by the donor community, and that trust that we are actually sharing the same vision, but have maybe an approach which has a long-term effect, or maybe we should wait a little bit more time. It is not so easy to get it, and I think this is an also concrete example, and I hope that not only other organizations and donor community in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also in the Western Balkans will actually follow this and approach themselves, because it's not only about, okay, youth coming up to see, yes, we want to do that. It's about both sides taking a care of it and actually seeing the whole picture. I mean, seeing the bigger picture. I mean, I just wanted to share that also as an experience.
Thank you so much, Nedim. Very, very valuable as always. As we are approaching the end of this session soonish, I would like to use a chance to also ask one last question, and I ask you all to please participate. This gives us some clue of the next year, specifically what all of us are doing in terms of different thematic areas. So let's see if there are some overlapping, if different organizations are working in the same field or not, which topics are going to pop up, at least within this circle that we have today on this event. And while you're entering your inputs to this one, including national youth councils, of course, and youth organizations present, maybe Ognjen, you would like to reflect back on the ideas we saw previously, on concrete ideas for the coalition, or what you heard from people at the panel today. What do you think from perspective of RCC as the one who started all this? And thank you very much.
Thank you, Milena. Thank you for the great moderation, and thanks to all panelists for invaluable inputs and for all your ideas. And that is why we are all here. Sometimes, despite the goodwill, we are not able actually really to gather all representatives of the youth councils, and therefore I'm very happy that today we are all here discussing the future of the not only informal donor coordination mechanism, but also of the youth lab itself. So, of course, the ideas presented by the by panelists today are very warm welcomed, and as all of them are actually already know, everything we do in the youth lab is as per needs of our counterparts. Therefore, all ideas related, for example, what Milos was recently mentioning in regards to capacity building, or the future of the broad coalition on youth, meaning the inclusion of also donor representatives in some of the activities, but also the fact that Angie also mentioned in regards to the trust between the youth policymakers and donors is are all the points that we would like also to have on board. Why? Because also the essence and the key idea of the informal donor coordination mechanism was actually tailor-made as per needs of young people. Topics of the two youth policy labs we are having currently on youth unemployment and mental health are both actually as per conclusions of consultations with young people from the region, primarily with national youth councils, and therefore all ideas presented today will be taken into high consideration of the entire team. Especially having in mind the great cooperation we in RCC are having with Albania National Youth Congress, Youth Council of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Youth Council of Republika Srpska, National Youth Council of Serbia, but also our dear colleagues who joined us today online, National Youth Council of Macedonia and Kosovo Youth Council. All ideas that you had will be addressed accordingly, and also I will use this opportunity to invite again all the panelists, but also participants of the meeting, by hoping that next time we will also have a chance to hear a bit more from the donor community, because this is again something that we created jointly and discussed the joint communique program and online platform, but also to have a follow-up of this meeting in terms of the future of the broad coalition on youth, but also capacity building and youth policy labs. So basically, what makes me personally happy is that we had the youth panel entirely, so as to have the youth voices being heard. And thank you, Milena, for the preparation and for the great moderation, or also using the Menti thing, because I see it really useful. Somehow comparing to the first informal donor coordination meeting, where we had a chance really to learn about specific even projects that donor community is implementing or supporting. Now, somehow we wanted to turn it totally into another perspective and have the youth panel. So I hope that our dear friends from the donor community, but also representatives of the public administrations and other youth councils, that we at least triggered some new ideas or new approaches, and that in that light, we will have also a chance to learn from their side about possible inputs on how to proceed further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ognjen. I'm sure that the third meeting will be even better. We will learn as we go, and maybe this triangle of these different sectors that was mentioned before could be something to explore in terms of format of dialogue next time. What we got on screen so far, I see capacity building being super popular. The bigger the letters, the more inputs on that. So we also have youth mobility, activism, regional cooperation, informing youth, legislation, that's also important, youth entrepreneurship. But one thing that was mentioned in our previous talks, especially from the perspective of national youth councils, is youth organizing, systemic support to youth organizing and youth activism as a horizontal thing that stretches throughout any other theme that one NYC is working on. So for the end, I would like to pass the floor to Miljana to tell us a little bit about that and frame that idea on behalf of other NYCs as well.
Thank you, Milena. We strongly believe that if we have mechanisms set in place, so if we have dialogue mechanisms, if we have strong youth organizations that are willing to participate in the policy making, that are willing to monitor the implementation, participate in the implementation phase as well, and to evaluate the programs, we will have like the perfect cycle. So in order to achieve all of that, we need to have strong youth organizations, and NYCs are there. It's in their core mandate to ensure that the surroundings, so the context, the other actors are willing to support youth in organizing and are willing to support youth mechanisms that are dedicated to active youth participation. I am glad to conclude this with few on maybe optimistic note, with few remarks. First one is that youth is in the region the more organized than it was before, and it goes in very different levels. So we now have, thanks to the support of the RCC and RAICO, strong coalition that gathered 6 youth umbrella organizations that signed the memorandum of understanding and are willing to cooperate collaborate more at the regional scale, are willing to enhance this data-driven youth policy that is important, is willing to be the voice of youth, is willing to provide some protocols for solidarity mechanisms in order to ensure that no one is left behind. So this coalition really needs the support, further support, but it's really a mechanisms on how can we concretely influence the change that we want to see. And I'm saying mechanisms because it's really tackling, it can be tackling all the other topics that deem to be important in this particular time, as it was employability in the previous cycle, as it youth health now in the focus. So when we are providing the mechanisms, we are sure that every single topic that will be in our focus, it will ensure the quality of the work, because all the stakeholders will be there gathered, and all the inputs will be heard in that manner. And as for comms, we actually realized, because we have a lot of researches, and one of them is the most comprehensible and the most known, I would say, the alternative report on the position of youth. We actually want for the next year also to engage donor community in addressing more specifically the recommendations from this report. So we will strengthen the communication. We will include a member organization that deal with different aspects of the results of the researches that we are collecting in order to make sure that these two sides cooperate more, and that their work will be on the needs that we empirically gathered within this research. And in order to do that, we need to change internally as well. And I'm happy to share the new membership approach that we are now conducting, because if we want to have this youth organization presentable and well promoted in the online platform that RCC established, so if you want to have this particular aspect, we need to know our member organization as well. We need to know their capacity, their needs, their policy priorities, not only what they are doing at the moment because of the donor policies, but what they want to do and what will be their choice in order to become more well known because of that. So we will in the future months work on our membership strategy. We have the new position, membership coordinator, so that will be one important part internally that needs to be done in order to have this national and regional cooperation set in the right place.
Thank you, Milena, for that. Thank you so much. And to other panelists for this quite honest conversation, first of all, and then very constructive. I'm sure this is the path that we will be taking in the future, to have actually a dialogue, seek solutions, seek synergies, and very much thanks to RCC for making all of that happen. It's been a pleasure also for me to join here directly from Sarajevo. It's always nice to come back, and I do hope we get to meet again next year, all of us in person. Now back to Ognjen.
Thank you, Milena, for a great panel. I believe that all of us enjoyed participating in the event, both in person and online. And I really hope that in future we will have more opportunities actually to listen to young people, to listen all the needs and all the activities you would like to work on in future. So basically, as a follow-up, and maybe even as something that should go beyond the informal donor coordination mechanism, basically was our idea, even primarily by working on the preparation of this informal donor coordination mechanism. And that is why we proposed this joint communique that we shared with all of you as a commitment of all youth policymakers and donors who are supporting young people in the region, and to have it rather as a joint idea on the youth agenda in the future. This especially also in light of the regional youth agenda created this summer by young people within the Youth Forum of Berlin Summit organized by Raiko and with RCC's partnership. So, and somehow with Miljana's words on the very end about the cooperation between the national youth councils in the region and signing the memorandum of understanding, I'm very happy that we are having Raiko on board with us for the closing of today's second informal donor coordination meeting. And in that regard, I would like to give the floor to our friend Jan Zlatan Kolenovic, Director of Programs of Raiko. Jan, hello from Sarajevo, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. I'm jealous that I'm not in Sarajevo, but you can be also jealous that in Tirana is very sunny and warm weather today. But I was enjoying. I mean, we are working, as you know, a lot with all your partners also here, and we just finished consultation processes for the new strategy, which was exactly in focus most of those topics that are relevant for the building capacities of youth structures across the region. So I don't want to repeat anything. I think it was exactly very well emphasized, and that we are trying also to support together with RCC and some other initiatives this kind of more sustainable approach when it comes to the youth organizations and their status in the Balkans. But also I think for the donor community it is also useful to have concrete, put it on the table needs of young people, but also some strategic, let's say, reasons for investment and the cooperation further on. So I don't want to take your time, especially because it's probably before lunch and after a long day, but I would like to put few things. One, I think it's very relevant to have this kind of regular, formal, not only informal, cooperation when it comes to coordination between youth sector, governmental institutions in the region, and also international organizations. Without coffee, without communication, without regular meetings, I think it's very difficult. It's a bit a space with too many actors, and then it becomes sometimes, knowing also from the other shoes, more like race and catching different funding opportunities rather than working together and trying to do something in more systematic way. So I'm always, even personally, and then also from the side of Raiko, I can say more for these structured dialogues and where all these groups are together. Second point, which I want to share, we are entering very soon in the new strategy period 22-24, and although it's still not adopted by our governing board, as it will be hopefully in the next 2 weeks, I can share that one results of the consultations with national youth councils, with different stakeholders in the previous months, is exactly that Raiko would like to fulfill its role in even put in the statute by the parliaments in the Western Balkans, which says to help regional youth coordination, but with certain investment. And that investment will be also through the granting scheme, but also more in this advocacy area, how to support the whole pillar should basically be focused on how to support enabling environment, which means also the question of policies, legislation, but also in coordination, including the donor community, but also business sector and some other non-used much stakeholders that can invest financially or with some other ways and resources in youth primarily, and the regional cooperation of youth when we talk about this topic. So the second information is this new strategy where we are definitely open and we should be used for support of most of the content that you already mentioned today, but even with a stronger presence in this advocacy, let's say, support and helping both governments that are our founders, but also youth structures, how to basically create bigger impact. The third point, which I can announce, we, as a result, we just organized in Tirana a very successful first ministerial meeting with 10 ministries of youth and education. And some of them are the same in some contracting parties, but some of them are separate, so 10 of them exist. And one of the very positive, I would say, messages from this ministerial meeting is that there is readiness, regardless of tensions and maybe instability that is visible here and there in the region, to work together, not only through format of RICO, RCC, or some other regional initiatives, but generally as a governments to invest more in youth. I think that was a positive message that can be built upon on that also as a regular meetings in the next year. But between that also, we are entering in the new year with the chairmanship of RICO, which this year was Montenegro, but next year is also Serbia. And from both ministries of youth and sport and education, I'm also confident that it will be highly on agenda of the chairmanship, which means also on RICO, this topic about stronger, more and efficient regional cooperation when it comes to the youth sectors and governments. And I think this topic of donor coordination is very interesting in this triangle between donor community, national youth councils, and governments also, where RICO, I mean, and probably Ogin will say from RCC side, can support further logistically or with the technical assistance, how that can be even more practically, let's say, seen in the future. So this is another information, and obviously, I don't want now to use this as a PR of other initiatives that are, let's say, going on and that are supporting this, let's say, 2022. Yasmin is present here, I see, with the flagship project on super schools and school exchanges, but there are many more also that are very relevant and will support also, I would say, different donors to come together and to be more focused on real needs. And I can also just use opportunity that the needs of young people are also visible in our study, Shared Futures. I even saw, in fact, as a small example for the new call of USAID, which was tackling Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Kosovo for peace building. If you noticed that month ago, they were also using quotations for shared futures. And this is exactly what we are trying to do, to say you don't have to do your own researches, or maybe sometimes the donor community is not clear what are the needs. So let's use already existing materials, and this one, Shared Futures, is based on 5,400 sample. And I think with those consultations that we did in the previous months with RCC doing the youth lab on particular specific topics, and some of these documents, these are already resources to help. And on this example, they are using it also, some agencies, when they are doing programming and offering later on possibility of funding. So I think this is also a two-way street, and it's something that has to be, as a final saying from my side, on regular basis, in triangle, organized, and something that, in my opinion, should also bring all key leaders from the international community, that we should attract them. We should take their attention, and I think it's possible, especially embassies, that they have, most of them, at least the strongest donors, their units for Western Balkan, so to have directly from Oslo, from Berlin, from Bern, etc., responsible people that we will be able to attract and also share those messages and conclusions that you did most of the job already today. So Raiko is here, open definitely. I mean, also to jump in more in this topic, but also I'm very happy always to see youth sector to be trendsetters, especially in the last year, umbrella organizations that we also signed the memos with them. And I think that kind of push is also good if it's coming from different sides. So I think, Ognian, if you don't have any particularly more specific questions, I can close with, from my side, with those messages, and also to congratulate everyone this work that is done, especially in this year. I don't know, is it 16 December, already good day for saying New Year wishes, but we will also on 28th of December have opportunity to do final promotion of new platform for young people, Heide.media, and some other information about strategy. So that will be opportunity to say Happy New Year. But those who will not join us at that time, I'm also very looking forward for coming year for cooperation on behalf of Raiko. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jan, for joining us, and I would like to thank you personally, but also on behalf of RCC, for great support to the Western Balkans Youth Lab, and it is always our pleasure to have you on all activities we are organizing. Despite the fact that the puzzle and colors of Raiko are always reminding us on the youth cooperation, peace building, and regional cooperation, I hope that you will manage to solve that technical issue and use the background as the same as all participants joining us virtually. But more importantly, thank you very much for sharing these messages, especially when it comes to youth ministerial and also strategic planning of Raiko, because we also see it as a great opportunity for everyone in the Western Balkans 6 to actually benefit even more from Raiko's activities. And I hope that the role of Raiko will be even more stronger, because that is something that we are all cheering for. Also, it was very interesting to hear about chairmanship of Serbia of the Raiko's governing board, if I'm not mistaken, for the next year. So as the Informal Broad Coalition on Youth is something that we co-own, all of us. I hope that that is maybe also, since Miljana is here, also a good food for thought for us to think about maybe involvement of the National Youth Council of Serbia, local branch office of Raiko in Serbia, as well as the line ministry, to maybe jointly co-organize the following informal donor coordination mechanism with all other relevant international organizations who are active, so as to make sure to promote synergy and cooperation. And by saying this, I would like to announce that the third donor coordination meeting will be held in the fourth quarter of the 2022. While in meantime, I hope that we all will be in touch when it comes to data for the sake of the online platform, but also to discuss and but to see the ways how to actually adjust these ideas from the youth panel today into concrete activities, at least within the Western Balkans Youth Lab. By saying this, I would like to thank also to all panelists who joined us this morning on the panel session. I would like to thank the participants who are here in the room, Petra for her great support, Damir for the great work, and of course I hope that we will have more of these exchanges in the future, while we in Youth Lab are staying open and remain available always to discuss any kind of these conferences, seminars and gatherings where we will be able to exchange new ideas and practices we all have. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you soon.
Haha.